Oh, no. Okay, so we are live. I thought I pressed the wrong button. Hey, welcome to All Politics Are Local, America's number one political radio talk show. Political radio talk show. We are here with another week on All Politics Are Local. You know, if it's the second weekend, you know it's the vote. That will be coming up at 7 o'clock, where we have a series of activists from around the country talk about the things that are going on and some of the problems they have and some of the ways to solve them. We'll also have a great guest at 8 o'clock, Naseed Gifted, who is doing ChemFest for, I believe this is the 7th year, where it is a Black animation festival celebrating all that is Black and animation. So I think that should be fun. There are a lot of
bad.
Yeah, I mean, and he's an incredible artist and comic book artist as well.
Engineer, fully loaded educator, firing up young kids, push them to STEM careers with the arts. God, Amiri would be proud of that.
Yes, absolutely. And we are then going to have DJ Rhino come on, and DJ Rhino, the state of hip hop, that will be coming on. That will be coming on shortly as well. That will be coming on at 8:30. So as of right now, we can get started with our first guest. And we are very happy to have our first guest with us. The NAACP is an organization that has long been in our community, and they have offices in every state in the country. They are always active and at work. They are having their state convention. They're having their state convention very soon, and we are very happy to have the person who is taking the lead in planning this year. And I'm giving you just a little bit of an introduction, but we know that Zaid actually does give better introductions. And so this is my introduction. Like you are a leader in a historical in a historical organization that has deep roots, especially in New Jersey, with its history of racism and white supremacy that that is actually often underestimated. So but someone can give me a better, but Zaid will give you a much better introduction. Zaid.
Well, we all of our guests come fully loaded, and Crystal Charley Sibley is certainly no exception to that rule. Another fiery young organizer. One of the things that's happening in the NAACP that I even have to remind her and her crew of sometime when they get a little frustrated with some of us who are older. I said, look, this is your generation's time to take over. Ride. Shake things up. Go ahead and do that. And she represents the youth movement, I would dare say, in the New Jersey NAACP that's trying to break ground on some fronts often that they're not associated with, in addition to being that steadfast, stable, steady, traditional resource arm standing up for truth and justice and what's right and necessary for our people that the NAACP has done for more than 100 years now. Let us remember that the NAACP is our first, is the mother of our civil rights organizations. So it's a tradition that is very important to honor and respect and uphold, and where its leadership is doing the right thing and powerful things, and we uphold that, right? So I am very proud to have with us the convention chair of the NAACP State Conference, Crystal Sibley, who will definitely break all of that down. Sweetheart, you ready to ride?
Thank you.
I'm ready to ride. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. So I'm really excited. We have our 2021 virtual convention. This is our second year being a virtual annual convention. But we have not skipped a beat when it comes to trying to bring not only some of our most powerful civil rights activists and leaders nationally, but definitely the last 2 years, we've had a really solid focus on emphasizing the good work done right here in the state of New Jersey. As mentioned earlier, we are not as progressive as a state as we always like to tout. And so, the NAACP and the other civil rights organizations and social justice and social action organizations in the state of New Jersey have their work cut out for them, for all of us. And so this year we are featuring our keynote speaker is Nakechi Taifa, Esquire. She is a prolific voice on reparations. As you know, in the state of New Jersey, we are
Keep
all
saying
working.
that.
Yes,
She's
yes.
a comrade of mine. We go back a lot of years. We had her on a few weeks ago.
Oh, really? Wonderful. I knew she's a comrade, but I missed that episode. I'm sorry, I missed that. I had the opportunity to hear her last year. She was speaking at a virtual conference for families of lynching victims in the nation, and I am the granddaughter of a lynching victim, and so she really gave the sister gave.
Whoa, time out.
And
We got to get. I know
echoing.
there's some feedback. I don't know where that's coming from, but there's a little bit of
Really?
a feedback. But that's not why I'm saying. That's not why I'm timing out. I just heard
No.
this young lady said that she is the granddaughter of a lynching in her family. We got to put a pin in that and talk about that for a second, because not too many folks her age walking around are that cognizant of how real that is a factor in our lives. So why
Fair.
don't you back up and just take a
Absolutely.
minute and tell us about that, Crystal?
Yes, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, he was lynched in Mobile, Alabama in 1954. And at that time, as I've done a little more research on it, I know that the NAACP down there did try to look into it. And of course, it was written off as a suicide attempt, but that's pretty hard to do when you are hanging from a tree and your hands and feet are tied. So, that is something that, has, carried on in our family story, where it has definitely impacted, obviously, the first generation, directly under my grandfather. In fact, it was his children who found him hanging from the tree. And, that has really stuck with them, obviously, until most of their passing. Many of them have gone on, and then now, the grandchildren, we're doing our best to preserve that legacy and really be active in this space, because we're, as a people, we're owed so many, we have our just due, right, for all the things that were done to us that were horrific in the past, and that's really not that far, that's not that long ago.
No, it's not long ago at all.
So when people
I've got
think
some
about
feedback.
lynching and things like that, they hearken to a time that is not as far gone as what it, as really as current as it is. I'm 40 years old. So that just says something right there, that we're not talking about a long time, but then again, we've only had the right to vote for a very short amount of time. So they all go hand in hand in this work. And so, that is one of my reasons why I definitely continue to bang the drum, to right these wrongs, and certainly am on board for the case for reparations. And it's time that New Jersey gets on board with that too. I know at the very least we've been fighting for a task force, but we know we need so much more than a task force. That's literally the tip of the iceberg. And so, again, I had the opportunity to hear Nakichi speak on reparations. And if you've never heard anything about reparations, you should hear it from her. And I think that even if you were someone who really doubted the need or didn't understand the concept, she certainly knows how to break it down for you. And so we're really excited to have her come do that for the New Jersey State Conference NAACP convention, which, by the way, is open to the public. It is our convention. We are hosting it, but it is not exclusive to the members of the organization.
Okay. Now, question about does the NAACP officially support reparations now?
Yes. Well, the New Jersey State Conference does.
And is this new? Like, because one of the things that I think that Zaid alluded to is that there may be a generational difference between older members of the organization and younger members of the organization. I know that just growing up, we used to think of the NAACP as older, less, not really in touch, and that if you wanted to actually do something in the community, you would join an organization other than the NAACP.
Listen, I totally respect that. And you know what? As one of the younger leaders in the organization, you're 100% correct, right? That is out there, and it's out there because of the varied experiences. When young people come with the passion for progress, they're not always met with open arms by some of our more seasoned civil rights activists. And one of the things that I always say, and I've said it plenty of times on state level events is that, you know, we're a historic organization, but we will become history until you begin to embrace the young, right? And so unfortunately, I will say that it is a huge challenge that the organization has nationally, right? That, you know, when young folks come in, they're not, you know, there seems to be a difficult road to, like, you know, mending the fences between the younger and older generations, and it's unfair, and it stifles the movement, right? It stifles the progress of the movement. And I think that there's room for all of us in it, right? I think there's things we can learn from our more seasoned civil rights activists, but there's certainly more they can learn from us as well. Because, you know, civil rights is so multifaceted, and it's very different than it was probably when they began. That if they're not willing to come on board, you know, it stagnates the progress. But I can say that our leadership, you know, President Smith, is not someone who is anti-young leadership. And he too often has to go to bat in spaces to support the young leaders in the organization. And so the best thing I can say to that is that it's always my hope and prayer that, you know, the younger generation can stick with it long enough to make the change within the organization. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say it's not hard fought.
Well, it seems like you've been fighting that fight. Um, can you tell us what some of the things are at the like? Why should we go to this convention, or why should we look at the convention? Why is it something that's really important?
Absolutely. So, like I said, you know, we have really made an effort to highlight the great work, and also magnify the great struggle that exists in the state of New Jersey. And so, as a convention chair I've been the convention chair now since 2017. But I will say for the last 2 years, we have really made it so that our committee chairs, right, in their respective areas, are really participating in the planning and organizing of the convention by putting out there what they're supposed to be specializing in, for a lack of a better term. So our health chair, you know, she's very much on. She keeps the state conference current with things like Black maternal health and infant mortality, Black maternal mortality in New Jersey, obviously COVID-19 and the disparate ways that it's affected our community. We have our criminal justice chair, Rick Robinson, put together his panel, and I believe that I'm very excited to know that Zaid will be on that panel, and he has come and spoke for the convention. So when you look at the people I have really worked hard for, and my team has worked hard for to bring to the table, you know, if we're bringing Zaid Muhammad to the table, we're definitely trying to keep it real and giving people the clearest picture of what's actually happening in New Jersey and what needs to happen on the ground. And quite frankly, some people are not ready for that and haven't been ready each year. But while I'm still sitting here, they're going to have to get ready, because that's what we're doing. So why tune in? We're going to cover what's happening locally. And I say locally, I mean statewide. I mean, we all know the national struggles, the national things that we see happen as a result of systemic racism, but we're trying to correct these problems right here in New Jersey. So, you know, we talk about criminal justice and criminal justice reform as it relates to New Jersey. What have we accomplished? What's still left to do? How you can get involved, what are your marching orders, and really that's kind of been the formula for the last 2 years on all of these topics. Housing is a huge topic, obviously. The moratorium ending, and people with all these pending evictions, that's information that we want our people to know about. And clearly, you know, if anybody who's ever run across our housing chair, Mike McNeil, this is his life's work. He is the guru, and he's going to make sure that his people are taken care of. We have to just heed the word. Like I said, our health chair, I know we're having Dr. Chris Purnell covering some COVID stuff this year. We're going to be
Chris
talking
was
with
on with us just a couple of weeks ago.
yes. We're trying to
Not
bring
from North. We
them.
love it dearly.
Yes, and I've had the opportunity to hear her speak in my other capacity as director of Black Health Equity for Salvation and Social Justice. And so, you know, like, these are the heavy hitters that we're bringing, because, you know, for whatever reason, sometimes we don't want to take each other's word, but, you know, we try to bring you credible messengers at this convention, and any convention that I can certainly say that I've chaired. That's always been the focus. So why attend? Because it really helps you to put get the pulse of what's happening in New Jersey civil rights and social justice. We also get representation from the United Black Agenda, which consists of, like the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, Salvation and Social Justice, Black Women Lawyers, BIC. Goodness, I know I'm missing the Multi-Faith Alliance, Black African American Multi-Faith Alliance. And NAACP is represented there because, as a United Black Agenda, we've come together to fight simultaneously, side by side, together, however you want to say it, for some of these really common, common known needs when it comes to inequities and inequality in New Jersey. So, we want everybody to be able to hear from everyone who's really on the ground. And hopefully the hope is that you're inspired. If you're not on the ground, you're not doing the work, you become inspired to get on the ground and do the work. And, in previous years, when you come there, conventions have been good and you get good information. But I want to make sure that everybody literally got specific marching orders from each of the chairs and the panelists to say what they can do in New Jersey to start effectuating change. We have to break out of silos.
And that leads me to the next question that I have, because you have the convention, people talk, and then they go home. And I like what you said about marching orders, right?
Yes.
So what do you mean specifically by marching orders? And are politicians and activists who can actually affect change also going to be there? Like, is there some link between the talk about the policy and the people who could actually get it done?
Absolutely. I will say that the state conference has worked really hard to maintain respectable relationships with different politicians that we can have their ear when we need to. And I don't and when I say have their ear, it's not indicative of friendship. It's indicative of a level of respect, which means that we should be able to speak very frankly about an issue and come to them with expectations. I know for one thing, I'm the immediate past president of the Southern Burlington County NAACP, and Marcus Sibley, my husband, is now the current president. And one of the things that we've always, like, the drum we beat in Southern Burlington County is that, your political involvement has to go so much further than the vote, right? Oftentimes when you hear about voter registration and things like that, you connect that to the NAACP. But see, for us, we see it a little differently. We have to take it so many steps further, right? Our expectation in Southern Burlington County is that you're attending your council meetings, you're attending your school board meetings, you're present and you're participating. And when someone is not representing you and not representing your expectations, then our expectation is that you play your part in the political role and vote them out, right? And that is irrespective of party or color. Right, because we recognize, at least in Southern Burlington County, and most of us in the state conference, state level leadership, we recognize that we've been done dirty by both parties, and so there can't be an expectation of party line voting without accountability. And so when I talk about marching orders, our expectation is that you start to. We tell people, you have to engage your legislators. It shouldn't be a cold call if you call yourself an activist. If you call yourself an activist, they should kind of know your name a little bit, right? Because you should be engaged in that process. When we talk about marching orders, when a call to action goes out, whether it's something that's very impactful, but not as much of a heavy lift, even like a sign-on letter, then you should get your name on it. You should make sure the organizations that represent you have their name on it. If it's a call to being on the ground, get on the ground or send somebody who can. And at the very least, we all have our shortcomings. If the best you can do is put the stamps on something, right? Be the stamp putter. Like, everybody has to do their part. And that's really that's the resounding message that we hope everyone gets out of the convention, but specific to each area. So we're looking at housing, we're looking at education, we're looking at environmental justice, which is huge, 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 huge. I mean, if you don't talk about the environment, I mean, we're always at the bottom of the food chain for the environment, and it has a trickle down effect in healthcare. It has a trickle down effect in education. It has a trickle down effect in the financial wealth gap. Right? These are all the things that we're trying to put together and let people know that None of these things are separate and apart, but we have to address them individually and collectively.
You muted, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I was gonna. Well, actually, Zai, do you have any questions or clarification at this point?
Well, now actually, I just wanted to blow some things up, and I'm very proud of what Crystal and her crew is doing, and I have a great admiration for Richard. We've shared platforms together around the state for several years now. But one of the things that's in the air that's important to appreciate about where this work can and should go, right? Beyond their organization and their organization using the convention to bring folks together is the question of a united front, right? Something that Malcolm always talked about, and Mary brought it to us when he was with us in Newark. And as we try and get some key things done at a very dangerous crossroads time in this country's history, right? But Donald Trump wasn't just a blip on the screen who was backwards and corny, and now he's gone, and we got Joe Biden, and it's happy go lucky time. Now, these folks literally tried to take over the country, right? Are still actively and dangerously mobilized, and they penetrate and perpetrate the ranks of law enforcement throughout this country. So we need to be clear on why our kids are getting killed in the street without accountability, and why institutions like the police stay locked, step and barrel in their unity to prevent any real reform from coming. If they got united fronts on their side, damn it, we need to have united fronts on ours to make the difference that we made. A few years ago, just to give you a picture of what I'm talking about. In the last several years, since Crystal has been convention chair, for instance, right? Main guest speaker, Bobby Seale. Who is Bobby Seale? The chairman of the Black Panther Party. Now, when Bobby was setting the party off in the early 60s, that was unheard of. That they would be getting down like that. There was a big divide within the movement between those forces. But here we are in Century 21 at another pivotal crossroads that I hope folks really appreciate how serious it is. Our folks are coming together. Ilyasa Shabazz, Fania Davis. Some strong voices have come through from the other stream of struggle that you would associate with, right? But those forces are coming together, right? Richard, NAACP, that united Black agenda. There's some of us are knocking at, it's too small. Right? I'm arguing with them. It's too small. Let's bring these other organizations and let's really blow this thing up, and let's shake this state house up, regardless of who the governor is. All due respect to Governor Murphy, who's done some good things. He's no Chris Christie, but we need some more out of his behind too, making it plain. So I just Crystal, let me ask you this. You touched on something, and it's a place I hope we may look at going in the next week or so, and just in the wake of the devastation of Ida, and I call the Hurricane Ida B. As in Ida B. Wells, one of the founders of the NAACP.
Yes, that's right.
Calling on the ancestral whirlwind, right? Marcus, your husband, is also in the environmental chair now, right?
Yes.
So here's and when you think of environmental justice, environmental racism, and those voices, you rarely think of Black voices in that mix.
Yes.
So what, from your vantage point, why do you think it's important for Black voices to be in that mix on that particular issue?
Oh my goodness, I that's a loaded question.
And of course, you can start with
that's a loaded question.
With y'all.
and guess what? I have to take my hat off to my husband, because he has schooled me on things that I didn't even know. Things that we just, for whatever reason, environment has never, oftentimes. And I don't want to use absolutes like never, but it's very rare. It's unlikely that it's always like on the forefront of when we're thinking about civil rights and inequality, right? And inequities. For whatever reason, we're not thinking about the fact that, historically, right, some of the major highways come through Black communities. And it not only does it destroy the communities for obvious reasons, but then it comes with the added pollution. When you look at the added pollution, you start looking at the asthma rates and the population around it. Let's talk about the asthma rates in children, right? The children now are missing school because of asthma, right? Now you're looking at how the environment has impacted their health and has now impacted their education. Now you have, let's say a chronic health condition as a result, that costs money to treat. Now you're looking at the disparities with the financial wealth gap. I mean, they all go hand in hand, right? Start looking at what's around you. These companies, from what I've definitely learned a lot from my husband, a lot of these major polluters, they court these inner cities to come in and bring their projects in because the money looks good to the community, to those who can sign off on it, but the detriment to those who live there is like horrific. Think about just a few years ago in Newark with the pipes, with the water.
Absolutely.
Right. That's all manifestation of environmental injustice. And like we have to start to focus on that. Absolutely.
I want to shout out an NAACP elder from the town that I went to high school in. I went to high school, Jonathan, in Roselle, right? My roots are in Plainfield and Roselle, and she may still be the NAACP chair. I haven't seen her in a few years, and she's very much an elder now. But her name is Myrtle Counts, right?
Yes.
And the last time I shared a platform with Myrtle introduced herself as being the representative of a town that's considered at the heart of Cancer Alley, right? And that's that 1 in 9 pipeline that's loaded with pollution, right?
Yes.
Our own Newark, New Jersey, the Ironbound section, we love it, of course, for its our restaurants, our great seafood and all that, but it's also a toxic dump site, right? And our comrades and friends from the Ironbound Community Corporation broke ground on the importance of environmental justice and racism based on what was happening in terms of toxic dumping right here in Newark, right? And of course, the folks who are on the shortest end of the stick of all of that pollution and that waste and that toxicity are our communities saturated in those areas with the least resources to address that, But yeah, Myrtle was and this is just a few years ago when Myrtle introduced herself in that way, and I had to just stop and say, whoa, and I've known Myrtle since I was in high school. I grew up with a daughter, right? I'm like, I hadn't heard of our town framed that way, and had to stop and think. Jersey, we got the swamps, and out of those swamps, we are indeed Cancer Alley, So it really, turned a light on in my old head, and made me even begin to think important about that. But the point is that the NAACP was right there on that.
And as we're ending the end of this segment, can you tell us where to go to participate and find out more information about the NAACP conference, and when is it?
So thank you for that, Jonathan. So the NAACP State Conference is next Saturday and Sunday, September 18th and 19th. And you can go to njscconvention.org, N as in New Jersey, NJ, New Jersey State Conference, njscconvention.org.
I want to put that up.
And is it virtual or is it?
It is virtual.
I'm going to put that up on our screen as we're talking, so our folks can get that.
And is it all weekend? As in, are there times is it Friday, Saturday all day? Is it?
It's Saturday, Sunday, and Saturday pretty much ends around 6 p.m., starting around 10 a.m. The beginning session is just the general business of the organization, like our plenary. And people are welcome to attend that, but only the delegates really participate in just voting on different things that we have to pass within the organization. And then from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. is all the public portion of the convention.
Okay.
And Sunday runs about the same time, 10 a.m. to a little less than 6 o'clock. I think we're looking at around 4 o'clock to end out on Sunday.
Okay, great.
Go ahead, Jonathan. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to get ready to ask the last question.
Quiet as it's kept. Now, folks look at me, they don't think of me being on this kind of space. But All Politics Are Local is the #1 hip hop talk show in the country, right?
There it is.
So the magic question that every single guest gets at the end of their interview is this very important, groundbreaking, eye-lifting, head-turning question. Who is your favorite hip-hop artist or group, or who are you rocking right now?
Oh, okay. That's two questions. Of all time and who am I rocking right now, or is that the same question?
You can answer either. It's your choice.
Yes.
Oh gosh.
So you give you multiple options.
Okay. So I have to say my favorite hip hop artist. Oh my gosh, that is really hard. Of all times, I'm gonna go with Notorious B.I.G.
Okay.
And who do I listen to the most right now? I don't even know if I want. Let's see. Here's
You can be honest.
Okay.
You're like, do I really want to say this? I don't think I want to
say.
put out.
I don't want. I don't. There's no shade. There's no judgment. Okay, but I will say, my favorite artist who I listen to the most now, and I find her to be empowering. I know that some people may find some of what she says to be controversial, but everybody got to tap in their own stuff. But I do like Megan Thee Stallion.
Okay. So she debated for Texas Southern. So she's really smart. She was a former college debater at Texas Southern. Debated apparently for one of the great all-time coaches, Robert Freeman. So
she's a lyricist. She's a true lyricist. And like her, I'm an HBCU grad. So I rock with Megan Thee Stallion.
Well, glad to have you on, and Zaid, and having you talk about the NAACP and the convention and how, because a lot of times we think of the NAACP, we think like much older, right? So it's really refreshing, like young and really trying to be out front on a lot of issues that they need to be out on. So thank you so much for coming on. And
thanks for having me.
Oh, we're gonna have to have you on again as well.
Yes.
Your sister, listen, Karen just gave you a shout out. Principal Kafele is always listening. Amina Bay just gave us a shout. So folks are listening, they're paying attention. They just raise up the shout outs.
Thank you all. Peace and blessings.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That is All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. And we are going to the next segment where we have, we're always honored to have him on the show. Anytime that we can have him on the show, we're always happy to have him. This is Dr. Kelly Harris. Dr. Kelly Harris is the chair of Africana Studies at Seton Hall University. He's a brilliant individual. And every time that there's a topic that needs further explication, needs some type of academic, what is the history of this? What are the things that we should be looking at? We like talking to Dr. Harris because he always breaks it down. And we are upon the anniversary of 9/11 tomorrow. And I happened upon an article from the New York Times that was really about a person named Terry Albury, who was an FBI agent who was, became empowered during the War on Terror. But he also was like, I can't keep destroying people like this. He talked about how incredibly internally racist the FBI was on a very nominal level, right? When he transferred to Minneapolis, he was talking about just its horrific nature of just the overt, intense racism and Islamophobia to the point where he leaked documents to the Independent and he ended up going to jail for 4 years as a result. And I thought it was just really fascinating because it was about 9/11, right? It was like one of those, there are a lot of these pieces that are coming out on what happened after 9/11. And the most interesting part about this piece that was mainstream in the New York Times, but no one's talking about it, was how when 9/11 happened, all of the things that happened that were supposed to rein in COINTELPRO, all of the procedures that were supposed to be in place so that COINTELPRO wouldn't be repeated, were ignored, circumvented, gone around, because terrorism was the main thing. So can you talk to us about what 9/11, what is some of the meaning of what happened in 9/11 that we should actually reflect on, not in a mainstream way of, oh, we're leaving Afghanistan, or but what was its effect on Black people, activism, our community? Wait, let me take you off of mute. You're on mute right now. I'm gonna take you off mute right now. All right, Dr. Harris.
Okay. Thank you for having me on. Good to see both of you all. What's up? What's up, Baba? So I'm glad the way you framed it, and that's a good reference to go to that New York Times piece, because I think that's an excellent way to start the discussion. There was a book written in the early '90s, published in the early '90s, called "The Clash of Civilizations" by Samuel Huntington. And it had a real large impact beyond academia, in the way people were framing the discussion about really what would the post-Cold War era look like. And it framed it in terms of this focus on Islam, but also as a clash of civilizations, and that's where Africa came in. When they saw Africa, how did they see Africa as a threat? But that impact, moving from that impacted something called the Project for a New American Century, which many of them who were worked on that project, a new imperial project, wound up working in the Bush administration, where they were able to use 9/11 as a pretext to go into Iraq and to expand into other areas. They use it as a pretext to develop an African Growth and Opportunity Act, which came under Clinton and Bush. So now this is not just African American. This is the global piece. This is the African diaspora. This is dealing with Africa. So how did they use that 9/11 as a pretext to go into Africa, to formulate a new imperialist policy in Africa? And they did that
in Africa than ever before.
That's right. That's right. They used it for that. Now on a domestic level, it's interesting. I'm going to go to The Wire, the television show The Wire. And there was an episode, and I think you all may remember, where McNulty was working with the FBI, and he was trying to get some stuff. And he was trying to find out what happened. And the guy said, well, that street stuff don't rate anymore, because we're focused on terrorism. And they had all this new technology and all this technology they were using that they would give to the Baltimore Police Department in trying to get the drug gangs in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, what that means is, and what happened in real time, is the technology that was developed to catch terrorists. That technology has been transferred to police departments, so they've been militarized in a way that we've never seen before. And that is another tool in their handbag that they have been able to use in really in their way of policing Black communities. So that had a huge impact on us.
What do you mean by militarized police? Like, what do you mean by that? Like militarized police?
I'm right behind you too on that, Kelly. Go ahead.
So the technology that they use to track down Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, that technology, that military technology, was transferred to police departments, to local police departments, that they will use to quell protests, to go after people that they feel are a threat in these communities. If you look at the technology that these police departments have, they're almost like a military. They're paramilitary. They really are. And it comes from, part of it, a larger part of it comes from 9/11.
But, okay, so someone may say, looking at this, what's wrong with the police having this if they're fighting gangs? Gangs are bad. We have violence in our communities. If they have all of this technology, why is that bad if they're just tracking gang members and people?
Excellent question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go. You want to jump in, Zaid, before I answer?
Because I got to. Because last year we also had our largest, most historic protest summit in the history of the country, right? And now folks talk about how things went peacefully and were well contained in Newark and whatnot. A lot of those protests were met with large, massive, armed responses by the police. Highly mechanized, highly armed responses by the police. And even though these marches were large and multiracial and peaceful in character, that doesn't mean that they were at all. And we started to begin to see the manifestation of that several years ago when certain epic police brutality cases popped up and large protests popped up in the name of what we now call the Black Lives Matter movement, right? So this stuff that was supposed to be done and used for terrorists has been put in the field in a non-negotiable way to come at our kids, right? And we've been down this road before, you know, COINTELPRO and all those things that were done to destroy the Black liberation movement, right? And here we are again under the bogus pretext of fighting terrorism, but they're really turning this machinery on, quote, its own citizens.
And they have labeled these Black protest groups as terrorist groups. Black Lives Matter was labeled as a terrorist group, and you know, so in that,
are you talking about like they were? And just for people who may not know, what do you mean by Black Lives Matter was labeled as a terrorist group?
Like, so there were conservative Republicans. As a matter of fact, this was during I believe the Bush administration, where they were seen and labeled as like a terrorist group. And I may be wrong on that. I think it was the Bush administration. But I remember that discussion and remember that there was pushback from that, from people like, well, how are you labeling, you know, Black Lives Matter like that? And even when we see current discussions, Black Lives Matter is being framed, and this particularly comes from Fox News, but being framed as a terrorist group. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just to push back on just some of the history there. I think you meant like the beginning of the Trump administration under Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, Black Lives Matter wasn't around during Bush. Thank you.
Right. They started under Obama, right? And I think they're talking about in the very beginning where they were labeled as like Black identity extremists. I think that was the term that Jeff Sessions used.
That's correct. Thank you for correcting me. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's all good. It's all good.
So now the other point, because to circle back on your question about why is it a bad thing, it's a bad thing because the way they just doubling down on the bad policing practices in our communities, and rather than seeing alternative ways of policing, which is what Black Lives Matter and other folk have been advocating for, looking at alternative ways of policing, and it's framed in the context of abolition. But we all know that means putting more resources into healthcare and education and other things to really to meet the problem at the base of the problem, to confront it at the structure, at the root. Rather than do that, they're doubling down on the same policing tactics they had before. Now they just have better technology to do it. So even when we look at COINTELPRO, now they have better technology to spy on people than they had before, and to track people.
And we're not necessarily talking about the way it's used to reduce crime, because there's some question about whether or not it is used for that purpose primarily, or is it used more to in the FBI and even in locally, is it used more to track people who are Black activists or Muslim? Even at Rutgers University, we know that the New York City Police Department was actually surveilling Muslim students on Rutgers Newark campus. That was a story that was broken by our local newspaper while Cory Booker was mayor. And the big pushback was Cory Booker didn't know, the Newark police didn't know that the New York City police officers were working undercover and then rented a place right across from where these students were meeting, and were involved in intense surveillance of these Rutgers students who were Muslim.
Which begs the question: if they're doing that to Rutgers students, what are they doing to adults in these activist organizations?
Right.
If that's their focus on students, what is their focus on these full-time activists and organizers? Right. So that's I think that's something that we have to really be thoughtful about and really be considerate about in terms of the impact of 9/11.
And I think also, just with the mainstream article, right? Like that, and the reason why I shared it was just, it's a mainstream New York Times article that basically is talking about a Black FBI agent's experience in post 9/11 new COINTELPRO stuff, where people were being watched who weren't guilty, people who were being surveilled and having their lives affected, some even destroyed. And the question is like, well, why aren't we talking about this? Like, this article just came out like last week. It's major paper of record. We're talking about all of these things when we're talking about the history of 9/11 and the commemoration. Why aren't we talking about its domestic implications, especially in light of the Patriot Act, things that happened after the Patriot Act, and the normalization of what should have been thought to be done a long time ago?
Well, you raise another excellent question, and it's interesting because if we look at the history of this country, anytime there's something like a 9/11, there's always going to be retrenchment. There's always going to be a tightening up of rights for people. There's always going to be more leeway given to intelligence agencies, whether before it was the FBI, Bureau of Intelligence. There's always going to be more power given to them because they think that there's an existential threat to the country, and we have to do whatever we can to stop this threat. So, and that's how they frame it. So what the brother was talking about, the article you're referencing, is predictable if we really reflect on it and in terms of what happened. But I think a lot of us got lulled to sleep because of the focus on the international aspect of it. I think a lot of us got lulled to sleep because we have focused on talking about U.S. foreign policy and going into Iraq and Afghanistan and its 20-year war and all these things that it meant. I think a lot of us fell asleep in terms of what it meant domestically. You're muted.
Jonathan.
Oh, okay. So especially in terms of the way in which surveillance, actually can affect us in our communities. Zaid, you were going to say something. We're going to jump in.
He made my point. He clearly made my point. And the rubric or the umbrella that's used to justify all these actions is simply, I call it the doctrine of national security. And anything done in the interest of national security, all things go. All things are on the table, and they come in with this wide, the sweeping range of legal actions, of militarizing of law enforcement entities, right? Minimizing folks' rank. Listen, if folks will remember, I ran an armed paramilitary organization, and during that time, we got put on. We were the domestic terrorist list. We're there, And
wait, you said you were on a domestic terrorist list?
Yeah, I ran the New Black Panther Party in this area for years, right? The New Black Panther Party was marked as a domestic terrorist outfit, right? And those of us who have been in that organization, right, doing work that we're unapologetically proud of, right, and serving our people, body and soul. We live with the residual dimensions of being on a joint terrorist task list, trying to fly out of the country on a vacation and getting stopped and searched and interrogated by U.S. Customs, trying to open a bank account, trying to get just do basic things that folks do in the world, like try and get a good paying job. That stuff is following a lot of us who have been on that march, right? And this is an above ground organization, right? That fed people, clothed people, and raised hell when the police beat up our people and shot our people down in the street, right? And we're not going to apologize for that. If that makes me a terrorist, then guess what? You need to make sure you spell my name right.
Now, and this is something that was predating 9/11, or was it? Was this predating 9/11?
No, 9/11 was an acceleration point, right?
Because when you were in the new Black
Panther
Party, that
around
was
the time I took over in this area. I took over in this area right before 9/11.
okay,
right? So it covered the duration of what we had been doing, and then this and all of those things are still in effect. Nothing has gone away, right? Now we talk about this retreat from Afghanistan that's been long overdue, but the internal dimensions of the national security state that manifested from there are still very much right here within the domestic confines of the United States.
Now, when you say that there's been a labeling of being a domestic terrorist, and that has direct implications on travel and jobs, is that something that you just have to find out through the Freedom of Information Act? Like, how do you know that you've been actually labeled in that way?
You usually, when you get confronted with it. And I think most of us that have gotten confronted with. I mean, nobody sends us a letter,
right? Like is there
Homeland Security or from the NSA, the National Security Agency, that you are, because of your participation in this organization, you are now on a domestic terrorist watch list. They ain't telling us, But when certain things happen, or we try and do certain things, they pop up in a way that lets everybody know that this person might be dangerous. You may want to think twice about doing business with this person, or having this person around, or engaged in any way that he or she may be applying for, right? And so we find out by happenstance, but it's there.
So, and this is a question to both of you: is there a movement to just get, like, I know back in the late 60s, early 70s, there was a movement that even pushed the concept of our Freedom of Information Act. And once that was passed, people started getting a lot of their FBI records, right? And a lot of the records that were on them. And then they found out that some of their friends were informants. They found out that there are only 3 people who were in here on this document. And these people who I trusted were informants. So there was a Freedom of Information Act, at least trend for a while. Is that something that needs to be pushed for again? Is that a thing? Do you have access to your FBI files, and would that even be good enough?
Zaid,
I haven't bothered to try and get mine, but I know mine has come up in other friends of mine. That's how I know mine is vibrant. But I haven't bothered to try and do that. But but from a research standpoint, I want to hear Kelly's response.
Well, I think the challenge for us, and it's a tough challenge, and one that I really don't know how to get behind. We learned about COINTELPRO because people broke into the media offices, FBI offices in Media, Pennsylvania in 1971. That's the only way we know about it. So how are we going to find out about the new type of COINTELPRO 2.0, if you will? How are we going to find out about it? How are we going to find out about those things? Unless there's a whistleblower, unless somebody shares what they're doing now. I think we have a good sense that these things are happening, but we don't know. And the FBI was forced to acknowledge COINTELPRO because they had no choice. The documents were out there; they had no choice. So with the Freedom of Information Act, they said, yeah, we got these COINTELPRO files. You can go online and look at these files. They have a lot of files of national people, of course, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, everything's online. Maybe not their full file, but more than 50% of it is. But how do you get them to acknowledge what it is that they're doing now? That we know they're doing, just like in the 60s and the 50s, Black activists knew that they were being spied on. They didn't call it COINTELPRO because we didn't know the name, but we knew it, right? We know it's happening now, but we don't know the name. And how do we get it? So I mean, I really don't know. I really don't know how to get past that unless there's a whistleblower, or unless we can, unless somebody would break in some office again and get some more information. I guess now somebody would do something through a computer and a database.
I'll say this though, and I need to say this that's very important and directly tied to your question, Jonathan, that I want you to appreciate is that the whole question of political prisoners is key here. It's absolutely key, right? Because one of the things when they quote, exposed COINTELPRO and acknowledged how wrong it was, and they only did that not just because the documents were there, but they also realized that within the ranks of elected officials, that they too were under surveillance, that they too were targets of different kinds, and out of fear for their own safety, right? They had to publicly come out against this. But did they address the victims of these actions? The question is no. And most of them have spent decades in prison. Some are still in prison. For New Jersey, of course, that means Sundiata Acoli, 84 years old, 40, going into his 49th year in captivity, put in a difficult spot that wound up with that madness that happened on the turnpike back in 73, May 2nd, and still paying the price for that even after he's done his time. And then, of course, we lift up the question of reparations. And I always say to reparation circles that reparation circles have always developed, particularly the modern reparations movement, has always raised up the residual damages that we face. And that has also always included the question of political prisoners, that they need to be released in the interest of justice.
And I'm glad you mentioned the reparations movement, because I keep saying that part of the reparations demands should be the releasing of all COINTELPRO files.
Absolutely.
Unredacted. If we're really going to try to
Jonathan,
get to any type of healing, that needs to be done.
I know that Cory Booker suggested a truth commission in the Senate. Yeah, he did that a few months back. Suggested not a truth and reconciliation, but a truth commission to basically study all the things that have happened to African Americans.
On the matter of truth and reconciliation, I got to give you some history that's important to this and bring it back to COINTELPRO and political prisoners. Dr. Mutulu Shakur had raised that up in the 1970s, right? In the 1970s. He has been in prison since 1986, fighting bone cancer and for his freedom, right? We have been raising this for a long time. It took steam in Southern Africa with the fall of apartheid and the emergence of a new South Africa. It was important there, and it did well there. It did some of what it was intended to do, right? And we were hoping, and we're still hoping, that process comes this way, and we still push for that. In fact, in this October, there is a Spirit of Mandela international tribunal, right, on the question of political prisoners in the United States, in that very spirit that picks up on what we did back in 1990. We did a powerful international convention dedicated to political prisoners back then, to continue to raise up this question and to raise it up not just as a domestic question and certain persons' individual rights and entitlement to freedom, but as a violation of our human rights in the international dimensions of what human rights means.
I'm so glad you mentioned Mandela, who was labeled a terrorist. So we have to remember that Mandela, Malcolm X, Dr. King, the Black Panther Party, all labeled terrorists. And I say that because we have to be very clear and careful. The political activity that we were engaged in, that the Black protest movement was engaged in, that the Black Liberation Army was engaged in, was never what Al Qaeda was engaged in. And we have to be clear about that, because when we talk about allies in this liberation struggle, I don't know any Black movement that has ever celebrated the killing of thousands of civilians. Never. I don't know. So we have to be clear when people are talking about terrorism and guerrilla warfare and struggle. We have to be clear that our struggle has always been principled, always has been principled. And this is why we call our people political prisoners, because it's a principled struggle and it's a war. But we don't kill people willy-nilly. We don't do that. That's not the way we struggle. It never has been.
You're muted, Jonathan.
We are getting toward the end of this segment, and we're getting ready to go roll into the next one on the vote. Dr. Harris and Zaid, we could roll this right over into that section. I believe we have we have Reverend Conrad Tillard, who's just joined us, and in terms of this section. So, hello, Reverend Tillard.
Good evening. How are you?
We're well, man. We hear that the person that you wanted to win in New York actually did.
Well, he won the primary, but let me say, I'll be the first one to say, this is going to be a very difficult race. As you know, Eric Adams, yes, he is the Democratic standard bearer. He won a crowded field, people like Maya Wiley, many others, Andrew Yang, etc. And so basically what we need folks to know is that Eric won in a field of largely liberal candidates. And in a post-de Blasio era, New Yorkers clearly did not want anyone that resembled Bill de Blasio, with crime out of control, the streets dirty, etc. So what we have to realize is that going into this primary this fall, now he is in a head-to-head race between he and Curtis Sliwa. Now, New York has a history of voting for, a recent history of voting for white candidates. One of the things that appealed to whites in the primary.
Right candidates at that.
What's that? Reactionary,
backwards right candidates at that.
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to Ed Koch, I mean, you know, people who were antagonistic toward the African American community. Bloomberg wasn't in manner, but he was antagonistic in terms of his policies. He was just a nice guy. But my point is this: out of that field, Eric had a lot of white support. Even the people on WABC, John Catsimatidis, the owner of the large supermarket chain, owner of WABC, Bo Dietl, these kind of people were for Eric Adams in the primary, but now he's going head to head against Curtis Sliwa. And so we got to be vigilant. We got to get out and vote because, you know, if you think about it, right off the bat, Staten Island is going to Curtis Sliwa. There's no question about that. That's without question. Then you got half of Brooklyn. That's ethnic white. Then you got to see what happens in the Bronx and Queens. So this is by no means over. We're really going to need Black people to turn out in a significant way in order for Eric to capture this victory. It's going to be a very close race.
Interesting, because you're like saying it's not over. It's not over by any means.
It's far from over.
Conrad, I got to ask you this. Now, look, we talking about. Now, you mean white folks in New York are not raising questions about Curtis Sliwa's credentials to hold office? Someone who's never been elected to anything, that it's perfectly all right for him now to become mayor of the largest city in the country? White folks aren't asking him those basic questions?
Brother, I'm surprised at you, because those same people voted for Donald Trump to be the president of the United States.
I had to go there.
He had never even run for school board or dog catcher.
Yeah, but at least they were able to see Donald Trump on TV, and he was rich.
But you got to remember now. No, don't sleep. No. All politics is local. Let me tell you something. Curtis Sliwa, the Guardian Angel brand, is one of the most famous brands in New York now. You got to remember, Curtis Sliwa's been doing this since the 70s. He's on radio every day in New York. So that brand is well established, that red beret. And when it's a race between two law and order candidates, Curtis certainly has at least, I mean, we know all the controversy. We know all the exaggerations, the lies. We know all of that. But, hey, that's not going to stop white ethnic voters that want to go with him. And so
you're telling me
can win this race.
So you're telling me Eric Adams, who is a police officer, Proud.
He's a retired police officer.
But proud retired police officer. I mean, like retired after many years of service police officer.
Distinguished service.
He's not. He's too dangerous. They need. They need Curtis
I didn't say that. I did not say that because I think again clearly when it was Eric against Andrew Yang, when it was Eric against Maya Wiley, when it was Eric against an untested, unproven Ray McGuire, Eric got a lot of support. But keep in mind, you had a very large contingent of Asian voters that joined in to block Eric. So, New York is a strange city. Don't forget, David Dinkins almost lost to Giuliani the first time and came back and lost to him the second time. So, this is going to be a close race. That's why I'm trying to be the town crier to warn people that we need to vote, because this is not going to be a cakewalk, and that would be the worst thing in the world, a low black voter turnout. And you got to remember, Eric is not popular with a lot of the Democratic Socialist young people, a lot of young people that are still confused about, the fact that he was a police officer. So we got to work. I mean, this is going to be a great race. It's a winnable race, but it's not one that we can take for granted. That's for certain.
But that's
one of the reasons why he's going to have to plug into all of those mayors like Mayor Baraka, who got connections with, all these local, where he's the president of the this mayors association here in New Jersey. But he has connections with mayors all over the country, and they need to have some sort of rally in New York to support Eric, But, someone's got to organize that in order to get out the vote. Because I agree with Conrad. I don't think that we should take Curtis Lewa, take him lightly, because that red beret is known everywhere. And then think, Trump, he got these angry white folk all over the country who are willing to put in millions of dollars to see this guy get reelected. They could give a damn about whether he's qualified or not. They can give a damn about that. And their racist tendency is that we just don't want this black man to win. So Eric can't get cocky and think that, that's not going to be a fight. I think that we all gotta assume that. And if we want to see New York stay black, then all of us got to get involved and get on the ground to help Eric get elected.
And to add to your point, Ed, not only do these folks did all these folks get behind Trump with money, these folks are violent in their organization. Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Right. I mean, January 6th was just a few months ago, right? And they're talking about another demonstration of some kind of mass character. I think next week in Washington D.C. Right. And one of the things, and this is something you may want to kick this question around has the government under the leadership of President Joe Biden now taken too lightly or been too quick to be dismissal about what happened on January 6th? And as a consequence, these folks are reloading and coming back with more of the same.
Yeah. And the other part to that, Brother Conrad, is that, remember, the brother Jamie out of South Carolina, who's now in charge of the DNC, I haven't really heard him making any noise in terms of making sure that there's some money put on the ground in New York to get Eric elected. Have you?
I have not. I know that Eric met with the President of the United States, and I know that Democrats know that New York is a crucial city and a crucial seat to hold. And let's not forget that in the last 30 years, New York City has been more of a Republican-led city than Democrat-led city. So, I think you're absolutely right. Eric and the Black community needs to try to stimulate some movement, some raising of funds, some energy.
Yeah.
And I think also you're absolutely right. The Democrat Party needs to prioritize this race, because
absolutely,
I'm telling you, I have been looking at the numbers. I have been listening to the folks, and I just know that the worst thing that can happen is we get caught up with half of our really strong base of young people saying I'll never vote for a cop.
Right.
He was black, we don't need a police officer. Well, this man, I can vouch for him. I mean, listen, Eric is a politician. Eric is a man, okay? I don't always agree with him on everything, but I'm not a politician. He is. But one thing I do know is that he was a captain in NYPD. He grew up in the Black community. He's tasted the sting of police brutality. And let's not forget that every single issue in the Black community in New York throughout the 80s and 90s, Eric Adams and that band of people like Noel Leader, people like Mark Claxton, people like Graham Weatherspoon, you
100
know,
black
the 100
what is it,
black
100
law
black law
enforcement who
enforcement who
care,
care? Yeah,
the
Yep.
Guardians, they were there. They
yeah.
stood with us shoulder to shoulder in
Right.
every instance. So if you want someone that has a proven track record, if you want someone that will get the city, because the other thing is we got to get this city back in order. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I would feel much better if it was Eric Adams' time than Curtis Slewa time.
Time. Absolutely.
Curtis
Yep.
Sleewood represents a big step backwards that could be pivotal to 2022, and these crazy folks taking the Congress back, and they're already having a field day at the Supreme Court. It would be a seriously dangerous step backwards.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, though, brother Conrad. I think that we've got to try and rejuvenate that vibe in New York that was flowing in the 70s when New York. I mean, in the 90s when New York felt real black and real strong, right? It doesn't feel like that now, And I think that is going to require, a lot of folk coming back into New York and surrounding Eric Adams and beginning to rile up to get out to vote. But he also got to be speaking to, I think, young people to get them out and get them motivated that there's going to be something there for them, some programs, some training, some jobs, something have got to be put on the board, and it's got to speak directly to them, almost like what your boy did down in Atlanta when he got elected. But also remember, he's in a fight too down in Atlanta to try and hold on to that Senate seat because them young people are not motivated now to come out and vote for him to get elected for a full term. So I think that in New York, I just think that black people don't need to get lax, and because remember, Cameron, a lot of people think it's over. They already think Eric Adams is won, and so we don't have to come out and vote in the general, and that's what they're hoping for, right? They're hoping that they don't happen.
That's exactly why I started out with the clarion call and reminding Brother Jonathan that this thing is a long way from over. He just won the first round, and that was a tough race.
Right.
But now it's for all the marbles, and you just don't know. I mean, shifting loyalties, shifting, once people may say they support Eric Adams. They took a position, it looked inevitable. Remember, New York is always, the mayor's races are always closer than you think. I remember when Bloomberg bought his third term, Brother Bill Thompson ran.
That's the word, bought.
Many black leaders felt it was futile. Many of them were on the dole of Bloomberg, but many of them thought it was futile. Bill Thompson fought. He only lost by 5 percentage points.
That was close.
Yeah, these races are very close. And this one is shaping up to be literally a battle of law and order. Now, people won't remember, and it won't matter to those that Eric Adams is a man with a master's degree, a college graduate. He served as a police officer. He's been a college professor at John Jay College. He went into the assembly, served honorably there, then went to Borough Hall and served honorably in Brooklyn. And Curtis Slewa, he can't match Eric in terms of credentials, but let's be clear. When you talk about New York figures, you talk about an Al Sharpton, you talk about an Ed Koch, you talk about a Donald Trump. Curtis Lee was right up there, for better or for worse, because of the work that he started in the 1970s, and that he's, that brand that he's continued. And a lot of ethnic whites view him very differently than blacks. I mean, they remember his assault on organized crime, his being relentless to the point where Gotti tried to rub him out. Remember, he got
Right,
shot
I remember that.
back in
I
that
remember
Yep.
that.
taxi cab.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
all politics are local. So,
Right.
That's right. There you go.
And remember, comrade, he's already been endorsed by Giuliani, who liked to run around and say he's the, he's America's mayor. You know what I mean? And a lot of them racists in New York still like that guy.
And let's bring it to and why it's particularly important to raise in this particular moment, I would dare say, is that we're getting ready to deal with the 20th anniversary of 9/11, right? And we just had a segment, comrade, where we were talking about how 9/11 was used as an acceleration point for the militarizing of the community and these backwards foreign entanglements that we're still paying for it, and we're just trying to figure out how to get out of, and the increased surveillance and over policing of our community. That energy is going to be recharged tomorrow and over the weekend, right? And that energy is going to be used to energize that base, the base of the Curtis Clevers of the land, right?
there is
With
no
the
question
Giulianis of the
about it.
land and whatnot, to keep their base up. And it's easy for our folks, and a lot of our folks got caught up into it, in the overarching trauma that was 9/11, and just kind of fell into that patriotic vibe uncritically. Right, and we need to be careful about that again here.
There is no question about it. I expect Curtis Lewa to be right next to Rudolph Giuliani. They're going to try tomorrow to revive him. You know, Giuliani's a one-trick pony. He was fading fast in New York politics. Hillary Clinton came. He was scared to run against her. He said he had prostate cancer, and 9/11 happened on his way out. He was facing an ignominious exit from the mayor's race, and 9/11
made him a
was
star
politically for him.
Yes.
And I don't mean this flippantly, because it was one of the darkest days in America, but for him it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to his career. Right. So tomorrow is going to be, and after Labor Day is when the campaign really kicks off, and so I look for Curtis with his strong, listen to WABC, because I think that's going to be a key station. Again, Katzmatidi is a big supermarket magnate in New York. He recently bought WABC. And this is sort of the bellwether of white New York. WOR, white only radio, as it's called, and WABC. And first they were very enthusiastic about Eric in the primary, because they certainly didn't want Maya Wiley. They certainly didn't want Andrew Yang. They certainly did not want
I like
some of those other candidates. So they got with Eric, but the question is, when it's head to head, are they going to stick with him? So I'm hoping that young people will understand this is not about whether this man has been a police officer. He's not the kind of police officer that you're talking about. I hope that, Eric is a Brooklyn politician. And the other thing that people have to understand, and I hope he does, I think you're right, Ed, he's got to have a message that will energize black folks, because
that's right.
One of the things about politicians from Brooklyn that come, Brooklyn is the most diverse borough in New York. And, something like 100 some odd languages spoken here or more. And he has had to work with people all across the map. So I'm hoping that he has a message. One of the good signs is that the black political establishment in the Bronx, Latinos, and blacks in Harlem and Queens have gotten behind him. And that's a great sign. Now we just got to turn out the base.
Do you think that the way in which they did the voting of the primary is something that may hurt Eric Adams, as in he was able to win the primary getting probably a little over a third of the votes, right? Like normally if there's a primary situation, then you're getting a lot of people coming out, you're still doing more mobilizing. Do you think that the way in which the voting process worked this time potentially can hurt Democrats?
And are you talking about rank voting now, right, Jonathan?
Rank voting, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's not a factor in this race, because it's a head-to-head race. But
I was talking about in
what
terms of the mass mobilization part.
yeah, what it does though, what it may obscure is that for a significant number of the votes that took Eric over, he was a second or third choice by, of many of those folks.
Right.
Now the question is, how enthusiastic am I going to be for my second or third choice?
Right. Right.
And that's why I'm saying we can ill afford a low voter turnout. That's the key.
Right.
Because if Staten Island and South Brooklyn and Queens and Ozone Park and those areas are excited about Curtis Lee when they turn out in significant numbers, and blacks in the historically black wards of Brooklyn and Manhattan and Bronx do not turn out, Latinos, if Asians go for Curtis, it's going to be very interesting. So, I mean, this is going to be a squeaker. I've talked to Eric. He knows that this is going to be a close race. He's up for the fight, and he is ready. And I tell you, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You mentioned something about the Asian American vote in New York City. Is that a vote that actually can skew a lot more conservative than the Asian vote nationally?
We know that toward the end of the race, in the ranked choice voting, John Liu, who, in fact, I saw him today at African American Clergy. John Liu has traditionally been close to African Americans, but you remember there was a schism between African Americans and Asians based upon African Americans believing that there needed to be a more diversified set of qualifications for the specialized high schools, Bronx Science, Tech.
Right.
Asian community felt that, they test well. Historically, it has been about a single test, and they felt, and understandably, I think they're wrong, but understandably they felt that, once we've mastered the game, now you want to change the rules of the game. I just think that, when you look for an admissions criteria, you want to see a well-rounded person. The test is just one factor. So there was a rift in the black community and the Asian community around that issue. Eric,
because the tests often just test economics and test prep, right? They don't
absolutely. I mean, you can literally sit a child in a restaurant or a cleaner's and just focus on test prep, and that child may not be socialized. That child may have no other development. And so, for those who said, "Hey, wait a minute," Harvard doesn't just admit based on one test, okay? And if anybody could, they could. So most institutions of higher learning, they are not only looking for people who have good grades or good test scores, they actually want interesting people. They want people who will contribute something to the class, something to the learning process and experience that will take place outside of the class. So that's one of the things.
And we realize that, and that's why I said skews more conservative, because that tests have largely been seen as, if you're focusing solely on the test, it is widely, in a very, very mainstream way, looked at as being racially exclusionary, right? Like, because for whatever reason, class, test prep, all the other things, they know that African Americans, specifically African American males, don't do as well on those particular standardized tests that don't test curriculum, right? They're not testing curriculum. They're not testing what's taught in the class. They are testing things that a test organization deems as good. And we know, personally as an educator, I know that changes every 5 years, that they have to update, and they go, oh, this test that you took was really bad. This test is better. And normally the test changes around the time Black people start to do well on it, right? Like, I'm not even kidding, right? Like, when Black people are like 80% passage of the HESPA exam, and then we're told that test is trash, it's too easy, and now we're going to give a test that's, a lot more difficult, having different skills that, teachers are going to have to teach now, right? Like, so in a way that works. So is it just on that issue, or is it conservatism more generally, or we don't know?
And I want to add to the question if I can, right?
Sure.
One of the things that we just did also that just popped up, as a part of the fallout of the pandemic, is that with the racism of the Trumps of the land, making it a Chinese disease, right? There was this ugly spate of anti-Asian racism, right, that popped up, right? And the black left and the Asian left in New York came together and did some solidarity with each other. That was important. But the base of the Asian community in New York City may be a bit more conservative and may be contemplating somebody more law and order like a Sleeper. So there is some serious work that has to be done in that area. So go ahead and I just want to add that layer to the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right about that. Because I said all that said, I'll get back to the test, is that essentially Eric has since changed his position. And I don't agree with his fallback position, but I will say this, the Asian community joined in with one of the other candidates to ask if those their citizens would support the other candidate over Eric Adams. John Liu joined together with one of the other candidates to say,
that's right.
Hey, Andrew Yang as well. And so the point is, we don't know where they stand with that. We don't know what deals were cut. But I will say this. Now, since you brought it up, I think that one of the things that the Asian community is saying, and I think in one sense, it's not racially motivated, but it is, in fact, people competing for power and competing for slots. I mean, it'd be very hard to make the argument that it's a class issue when many of the Asian immigrants would say, no, we're poor. We're going to test prep centers out in, Flushing, Queens. Our kids are working in the cleaners and the restaurant. We're just focused on test prep. So I would not say that there's an inherent racial bias in their quest for power. And I think in many ways they've worked very hard because remember, they're besting white students. They're besting Jewish students on that exam. And so they've achieved. I just feel like it's a bad it's a bad admissions criteria to let one factor. I mean, when you go to Brooklyn Tech, it is predominantly Asian. It wasn't always that way. There were blacks there. There were other races. And I just make the argument that I want to know, what extracurricular activities have you engaged in? What are you an actor? Can you, what are the things, are you volunteering in the community? I just don't understand. If colleges and universities have a complex admissions process where they're looking at a number of factors, how do the specialized high schools in New York look at one winner take all? One day determines the difference between going to a school like Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, Brooklyn Tech, LaGuardia. I mean, this is just, we've got to change that somehow, some way. So it's an open question, whether or not, but that's an important question that people may not be thinking about. It's not just about black votes and white votes. What will the Latinos do? A lot of the leadership has supported Eric, but let's see. What will the Asians do? These are open questions that will, in many ways, determine the outcome of that race.
But that, Brother Cameron, that was, early on, that was one of the fights that Bob Law had taken on, right? Where he, had got on Eric early on about that. You know what I mean? In terms of, him, going along with, the Asian community on that level. But again, remember, most of these kids, I'm talking about the Asian community. They're not into extracurricular activities like sports and so forth, right? So for them, they will spend 6-7 hours, in a coffee shop with their child studying. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I like to push back on that. I think that's like essentializing, and you don't really know that. I think that there are lots of different parents who definitely have their kids involved in piano and doing all kinds of things, debate, and so I would like to push back way on that. I think that's
to some extent, John. I think yeah, you're right. But to another level of that, I mean, I've heard Asian families say that our focus is not playing basketball. Our focus is not playing instruments. Our focus is that we want our kids to have an academic career, right, and be prepared when they take these particular exams. So for them,
I'm just saying that I think when you say they and them, I think it's way too much.
John, but I'm speaking specifically as it relates to the Asian community.
No, that's what I'm saying. Way too much. That's way too much generalization. I'm just saying. I would back that up a little bit.
I think that I'm basing that on conversations I've had, right? So I think that for me, I've had some conversations with other families off the record. They wouldn't say it publicly, but they've said that off the record that they spend a lot more time studying with their children as it relates particularly to that exam.
All right, so I think we're going to disagree a little on that. I think we're talking about resources and test prep, and I think that's something that upper middle class people do, right? I think that there are also certain community things in terms of test prep centers, right? But I do think that but getting into this thing about tests, my rejection of the test is that tests historically, like sociologically, have been racially skewed, which is one of the reasons why the focus in many elite universities has gone away from testing, because ultimately test economics, right? By and large, doesn't mean that poor kids don't do well on tests. Poor kids can't, right? A lot of Black poor kids do well on these tests, right? Lots of people do well on these tests as individuals. We're just talking about demographically. We know that like these tests skew in a racist way, which is why they are often critiqued. I think that's a legitimate critique, which is why like we had this issue even locally, right? Like when we're talking about what is the criteria for having kids admitting, and this is true it's not just in New York City, this is true all over the country, in every type of college, high school, when they're talking about like how you can admit people. And the admitting of people is definitely, if you're doing it based on test score, it's one of those things that everyone's like, that means if you're really doing it just based on test score, that really means that you don't really want Black people there because you know what the results will be beforehand. And it doesn't mean you don't have highly qualified Black students. It doesn't mean you don't have brilliant Black students. And yes, you'll have a few who will do well on these particular tests, and that's great. But understanding that about these standardized tests that aren't linked to curriculum, and I think that the thing that becomes most important is that these tests are never linked to curriculum. They are often these test preps are things that College Board or other private, semi-private organizations think are important. And those are the things that are tested. So a lot of these tests aren't even done by educators in New York City or educators in Newark or educators nationally. These are done by test prep companies. And every 5 or 6 years, the test will change and then the bar will shift. And normally when that happens, you have Black kids who are finally catching up because there's lagging there, right? So I know this definitely happened in Newark, where we had close to 80% passing on the HESPA, and then the HESPA was just a trash test, and they replaced it with something that was more in line with an AP exam and AP expectations. That across the board, many people all over New Jersey did poorly or did worse. But Black kids did especially worse. And again, it takes time to catch up. So I think that this whole testing thing, I just don't think we're being very honest about like these tests are like based in eugenics and they are meant to exclude. And that's their history. And we don't even want to talk about that. Like how these were originally eugenics tests, right? Like how their purpose was to be exclusionary. So yeah, that's my thing on that.
But Jonathan, I have to ask you a question because, obviously you are an educator, you have a greater familiarity with these tests, but I hear everything that you're saying. And again, I want to go on record. I believe that if Morehouse if Harvard, if Yale, if Howard, the greatest universities in the world, not only want to see test scores, not only want to look at your transcript, but they want you to write a personal statement. They want to evaluate what your life circumstances have been, because they get a fuller picture of who the person is and what that person might contribute to the school. Now, keep in mind, New York City is probably not going to be able to do as comprehensive an admissions process. But here's my point. I am against what the Asian community has been doing in terms of their organization. But how does that relate to? I mean, I've certainly knowing in this city that the Asian community would strongly push back from the characterization, and I'm not sure that's going to make the argument we want to make, that this is that they are an elite group, that they have historically been privileged. I mean, I think many of these folks would say, no, we are first generation immigrants. We working class people. We are, some of us are in abject poverty. And even with that being said, I still would say you need more of a admissions criteria. But I'm just
talking about how the test, like how when tests are evaluated about like who does better, it skews economically. There are lots of Asians who are wealthy. There are lots of Asians who are poor. They run the gamut. Not all of them do well on tests, right?
Right.
But when they actually just run the numbers of who does better on these tests, it's money, right? Like, and every single one, like almost every single categorization, SAT, all that, right? Like like these standardized tests test economics.
Okay.
So I'm because that's just the pushback, right? So I got. I'm not trying to vilify people on one side or the other, because people really have these concerns, and that's legit. But ultimately, when you're talking about standardized tests that are not linked to the curriculum, they are an economics test.
Okay.
That's why, by and large, as every single study that's come out on these tests concludes, right? Whether or not.
Well, let me ask you this question: what do middle class and affluent blacks, how do they score on?
Much better, right? Like that we do know that, right? Like even if there are some some discrepancies, if you're wealthy and you're doing these test preps and you are if your mom's a lawyer, if both your parents are lawyers, your vocabulary is going to be about 30,000 words more by the time you take these tests, right? Like if your parents are professional, then the number of words you have is just going to be larger, just because you're talking to your parents. So,
right, but then that would raise the question, and the reason why I'm saying this is that you don't want to leave an opening, because there's an Asian student that's going to say, "Hey, I scored higher than that. My parents don't even speak English."
Yeah, there are lots of exceptions, right? Like there are lots of poor kids who do well on these tests. I'm just talking about the cold hard numbers of everyone who studied this.
I understand.
Right, like I grant individual exceptions always exist, right? And you also have the thing that you have with if you have stable families, right? And you have a strong social network, that also applies as well, right? So there are, and you get this even in Black communities where you have the whole charter public school divide. You have people with family; they're not rich, but their family has strong social connections.
Right.
So the student has strong social reserves, right? Like strong social capital by which they have access to.
Well, my only pushback on that is that maybe they don't have strong social connections. Maybe they have strong values. Maybe they prioritize and they value things. And I think that I have a problem with arguments that will ultimately try to find every reason why. I mean,
no, we're saying the same thing on social stuff, right?
Right.
I didn't say social connections. I meant social network. You're calling it values. I'm just saying network, as in your mom and dad are like, or at least you have just your mom is there, but she's there for you, and they put you in their social network of people who are responsible.
And that's important. And I think that's one of the things we've got to start doing is going back, stop embracing a lot of this postmodernist nonsense. Feminists don't like for people to say that we need strong families. We need two-parent households, or certainly we need parents, even if they're divorced, working hard together, placing the child at the center of their lives. We have embraced a lot of this postmodernist nonsense. It's just like Brother Michael K. Williams. You know, it's one thing to memorialize him and say that this is tragic, and it is. It's unfortunate. But we also have to tell the people what Jesse told us in 1984, choose hope for your brain rather than dope for your veins. What Elijah Muhammad said, clean yourself up, get off the drugs. See, you can't always, in other words, yes, if you do the right things, and that is not fundamentally unfair, but there is something we need to be teaching our people more and more and more. And I've never said, and I would never argue to an Asian parent that has a Chinese restaurant. I've seen them, kids in there studying, doing homework. I'm not angry with them. I'm just saying, just because you've done that, still doesn't mean that we're not going to advocate for our kids too. But I admire that hard work, that focus, and that dedication. And we got to start inculcating that once again in our community. I know you're not saying that we don't have to do that, but I'm saying we need to start going back to basics in a lot of things that we talk about. And I think we get away from that sometimes with postmodernism.
This has been a loaded digression. We need to do a whole segment on this. And this is September. This is back to school time. We probably need to do that sooner than later too. But I wanted to bring it back to the whole question. I wanted to shout out
and Zaid, I agree. Before you introduce Donna, I agree. And what we need to do is get together some educators, right? Yes. Who teach from a Black perspective, and let's have this conversation, right? Yes. Because I think that also it makes a difference on who's in front of these kids and who's teaching them, right? Because you have to be able to connect with Black kids, particularly when you're competing against them phones that they're walking around with today.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
I heard Spike Lee say recently, he said that even though he has the means by which to educate his kid and perhaps send him to any school he wants, but he said that, he battles with that phone he walks around with. When he's not talking, 90% of the time his head is in his phone.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. That was right on. And Principal Felix chiming in, and he needs to be on. He needs to be in that discussion when we have it.
Absolutely.
He needs to be the chair of that discussion. He needs to chair that discussion.
Right on. But I'll second that motion.
Yes, and Conrad, I heard everything you and how this segued in, but we started out talking about Eric Adams. But I just want to be one of the things that was said earlier. We hope that he's able to reach the young people, and I think the one thing that he has a story that will reach the young people. The reason he became a police officer is because he was abused by the police, and it caused him to want to become a police officer so he can get in uniform to make a difference. So he has to be on message, tell that story, and kind of just ring that bell, because that's something that these young people are fighting today about, how police are mistreating people. And continue, that we see it constantly, and that's one of the big clarion calls that have brought us to the streets, and that's something that he can attest to. Well, it happened to me, and it caused me to make a decision that has led me down this path of public service.
Absolutely. And let me just add one more important caveat that a lot of people don't realize this. Eric Adams, like Charles Barron, they were a part of the great and noble Bishop Herbert Daughtry's church in downtown Brooklyn. And it was Reverend Daughtry at the
House
time.
of the Lord Church.
House of the Lord Pentecostal Church. And it was Reverend Daughtry that encouraged young Black men and grabbed a group of them, Eric, to go on the force. This is at a time when Black people were fighting against police brutality, celebrated cases. He encouraged Charles Barron to go into politics. So, when I was in the Nation of Islam, I mean, come on, we had many brothers who were state troopers, many brothers who were correction officers, many brothers who were on the force. And believe you me, they were very, very serious about looking out for the interests of their people when they were in those roles. So we just got to educate young folks that you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. This whole notion of politics of respectability, how he's a police officer, there's no good police officers. That we've got to help them to understand that, because they could make a critical error in this election. I see Jonathan smiling. I don't know.
And Conrad, today I was in Brooklyn and I happened to go. I was by the Brooklyn Heights Historic District, and they had whatever that building was. I couldn't. It was the Historical Society, but the messages they have out there, he needs to tell that message right from that corner, because that is a powerful. I'm looking forward to go back to that building, because it's racism persists and Brooklyn resists, and if that's where he started, he need to go right back there and start telling that story up until Election Day.
Absolutely.
What are you smiling about, Jonathan? What are you smiling about?
Wow. No, the
smiling about Jonathan.
Right. But so no, man, I think this is a good conversation. No, I actually somebody was shout out to Lillian. She keeps texting me something that's funny, and she keeps making me laugh on air. So that it's just a friend just texting me funny stuff.
Okay.
And the only thing I can hear in my head is Eddie Murphy saying, Lillian, stop.
Wow.
Tell her to stop distracting you.
But the other thing is too, though, when we talk about New York and we talk about, because remember, New York is a very important city politically, right? And I think that, we've got to somehow drive that in the hearts and minds of people. Remember, Brother Conrad, we don't have the Percy Suttons of the world around anymore, right? Who and even even though Charley Rangel is still around, remember that whole old crew, David Deakins, all of them, that whole strong black pack is no longer around. You know what I mean? So those brothers could get together, speak to Black New York, and get those elders riled up, and those elders would get us now who are, as you would say, Conrad, we're the elders, right? But our problem is that we can't get young people riled up, right? Because most of these young people are not interested in voting, and so that's why I say that. That's why I say that Eric has got to find some way to be able to speak to them, sort of like Mayor Baraka did in the city of Newark. Right, you've got to find some way to speak to him, and then think about what he did that was proactive when he moved on the police budget by taking $60 million from them and developing a whole new organization and putting all of the Black organizations and funding them with that $60 million, right? And recently through a successful 24 hours of peace in the city of New York, in the city of Newark, that had the largest gathering since the COVID thing began, which was a great test run in the city of Newark last weekend, Brother Conrad, with over 7,000 to 8,000 people come out.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm saying in New York, that sort of thing needs to, and I don't know, who those elected officials are that have that sort of connection now, because I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's a new lieutenant governor. Does he have any sway in the community amongst young people like that? I don't know.
I mean, I was at the organization in Brooklyn today called the African American Clergy and Elected Officials Organization. Reverend Dr. Robert Waterman is our chair, and he said it succinctly and I think correctly. A house divided against itself can't stand, and that's why this Black political convention is so important, because we have made so many strides in terms of assimilation. We don't simply play politics the way we did in the 1970s with the founding of the Congressional Black Caucus. Our communities are no longer the, for lack of a better term, safe Black political ghettos. In other words, in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Harlem, and many other areas across the country, across the city, Democratic Socialist candidates won city council races, state senate races, electing young people, which is a great thing. I always advocated for that. But I mean, if you're 22 years old and you've never been inside of a senior citizen center, that's probably not a good person to represent a large district. So again, being young is not a credential. But unfortunately, in many of these districts today, if you're young, if you're LBGT, if you're a socialist, those are automatic buzzwords that get folks elected. And if those people are dedicated to the community and they can serve the community, they've actually worked in the community, that's great. That's one thing. But if you just have groups like the Democratic Socialists electing people to office, and these are going to be some of the folks that Eric has had problems with. These are very ideological people. These are people who have a very ideological perspective, and it rubs up against the pragmatism of people who've actually served in the Black community for a long time. And so, you know, these are issues. All of these are issues, and I'm not sure that core of Black politics exists anywhere. I mean, yes, a city like Newark, that's a blessing. I mean, you're able to do that. But
An
places
exceptional
like
blessing too.
it is a blessing. I mean, even places like Atlanta that historically were that, Washington, these were our Black cities. These were our chocolate cities. But because of gentrification, all of our communities are changing. And because of that, our politics are changing. Most young African-American politicians today are trying to be Obama. And the problem with that is, you know, if you're in Newark, New Jersey, or in East New York, they don't need Obama. They need Adam Clayton Powell. So, I mean, you know, it depends on what you're running for. And then all of them, of course, everybody's got their eye on the next race, you know. So instead of wanting to be strong Black leaders like Coleman Young for Detroit, the people who had I don't give a damn attitude about what they say, we're trying to empower us. We don't have those kind of politicians today. Every one of our politicians is worried about, where am I running for next? And do I have crossover appeal?
The emergence of the career politician, yes.
Absolutely. Not only career politician, but in this Obama era. You know, in other words, I want to appeal to all of these different groups. And, you know, Obama was unique. He came along at a very, very unique time. One thing we learned after his election, that we certainly are not in a post-racial America as many wanted to make his election about. But now you have a whole generation of people. They can't tell you about Adam Clayton Powell. They can't tell you about Shirley Chisholm. They can't tell you about Sharp James. They can't tell you about
Maynard Jackson.
Maynard Jackson, Marion Barry, but they can tell you about Obama. They can tell you about Barack Obama. So this is a challenge for us in cities like New York.
Well, let me add this there, if I can. Right, one of the things that we needed that our young heads need to understand and appreciate, on the other side of the tracks, right, white folks, young white men and young white women are voting lock, stock, and barrel with these backwards leaders that they have with the Trumps and the Curtis Lewis of the land. They are coming out, right? And they're willing to block voting privileges and voting access, as we're seeing the resurgence of all these voter repression tactics that are emerging in the South. So we've got work to do, but that's certainly need to be a part of the message.
Oh, what I want to do is just, because I know that we're ending toward this section, but is there stuff that you would like to? Reverend Tillard, is there stuff that you'd want to end on, want us to know? Hello, Reverend Tiller.
How are you muted?
All right, so
Yeah, he looks like he's muted.
He's
John.
muted. He's
he is
muted.
muted. But yeah, he's muted, but he muted himself.
I thought Jonathan muted me. Okay.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm the one who's like, hey,
I
you
thought
have
he was
to
still
say.
seething over that politics and respectability remark.
No.
No, I'm just teasing.
Not seething at all. Not seething at all.
No, I'm just teasing. You know, I think again, I'd like to see us get out. Really, I think we have an enormous opportunity. When Dinkins was elected back in '89, 1990, that was the culmination of the work of Jesse Jackson, Raymond the Fox Jones, Adam Clayton Powell Sr., Jr. I mean, you name it. That was the culmination of that old school Black political establishment, the Gang of Four, the Four Horsemen. But what I see now is a generational shift. It is a person of our generation going literally from a raw recruit, a flatfoot police officer, rising in the ranks to captain and a sergeant, and then captain, going on to finish his education and become a professor, and then going to the legislature and working his way into the chief executive office of the borough of Brooklyn. One of our paisan, one of our people of our demographic, able to step into the largest city in the United States, the wealthiest, the most powerful city in the United States, as the chief executive officer. This is important. And this is a new generation. This is the fulfillment of the hip hop generation achieving and acquiring political power. So I'm hoping that we will be able to put our coalition together and win. This really matters.
And I think
that's a good all politics or local wind up of this segment. That's a mouthful.
And I was going to say, Reverend Tillard, I think that one of the things that you should always emphasize is that, you know, Eric Adams is a cop who, at great personal risk, fought against police brutality while being a cop. His life was on the line and in danger, especially because of what he was advocating. So
absolutely, and people forget that. I mean, you're standing at a press conference with Minister Louis Farrakhan, and you got to go back and work a shift as a sergeant. I mean, that's important. And you're standing with Abner Louima. You're standing with Eleanor Bumpus. You're standing with the family of Michael Stewart. You're marching in Bensonhurst, and you got to go back to work. I mean, that's why we can't sell this brother short and write him off as just this narrative. He's a cop. This man has dedicated his life, just like I have and you all have, to fighting for people who have suffered injustice in this system. And you're right. We can't forget about that. I stood up, but I didn't have to go work with ethnic white colleagues on the police force.
Yeah, so now that I think that's a great point. So thank you so much.
Thank you all,
Reverend Tillard.
Thanks, Reverend Tillard.
Always enjoyed being here.
And I was gonna say that because we're trying to always time these endings, right? Like, and timing the end of the segment. And this is one of the first times we're like, wow, we're on time. And then I'm looking at my clock. It's like, we're about a minute early, right? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you something that you can say in a minute, because I know we get started and it takes too long.
Right.
Well, but you know what? But what I will say, Reverend Tillard, you know, Ed has talked about the Percy Suttons, and I believe that I see a minute. Lillian, you see it, she had me cracking up on here. You can't go outside. But I listened today on the radio to a Marcus Clark, who just wrote a documentary about and he's from Brooklyn. He just wrote a documentary called Blood Brothers about Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
on Netflix.
Exactly. So there are you're out there, Reverend Tillard. So no Percy Sutton and those, they're not there, but you guys are out there. You get together, and I think that the message that needs to be stop. You make me nervous, Jonathan. That needs to be stated until election day is
Right.
to tell his story,
Absolutely.
and you
Absolutely.
guys have to
Yes.
do it.
Absolutely.
You are what you are. What Percy Sutton and them are, you are those gentlemen today, and you have to get everybody together, and y'all have to just say, get that message together and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it right up into those polls.
Absolutely.
And
20 seconds to go. Go ahead.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. All right, my brothers and sisters. God bless. Have a good evening.
All right, you too. When is the election? When is the election?
The election is the first Tuesday in November.
First Tuesday in November, like all the others. All right, thank you.
Okay, now.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, so now, thank you. That's All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We have with us, we are honored to go to the next segment, which is about Khem Fest. Now, I'm going to give somewhat of an introduction. Baba Zaid's going to give the real introduction because he gives the real introductions, right? So my introduction is I followed this brother's artwork for quite some time. He's a very good artist, comic book writer, entrepreneur. He's also, for full disclosure, my new vice principal. I'm a teacher. I'm a debate coach. He's my new vice principal. Very, very happy. I was very happy. And I'm not just saying that because you're here right now. I was very happy.
You are. I think you are.
He was coming to science to be a VP there because I think he brings a lot to the table, right? Because he's an engineer, he's a scientist, and an artist, and he believes in getting kids involved in all of those aspects. And I'm going to steal something from you, Baba Zaid, and then I'm going to give it to you.
Just go ahead and ride it. You got it.
No, I'm going to steal it from you, and then I'm going to give it to you, right? Thing that Baba Zaid said was that he uses art to get people involved, to get kids involved in science. And I think that is just a revolutionary statement. But before you say anything, I'm going to hand it off to Zaid to give the real introduction because he gives better introductions.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Ed.
But Zaid, before you give that introduction, which I know is going to be illustrious all in its own, I think that the one real plus is that this brother is one half of an all-black leadership team at that school, which is awesome. You know, and having that visual has never really been at Science High School, and I think that for us, you know, as I talk to Jonathan about this all the time, and even talk to the superintendent, I think that visual is extremely important for other young black kids to see themselves at a school like Science, but to see the leadership in these two black men. So much respect to you, my brother.
So, and my introduction at this point right now would be, you know, what's the term? Anticlimactic. Right. I'll just say this: it's been a pleasure watching this young man grow. Right. As I've watched Naseed for a long time and watching him grow, credentials, art, community, all of that. Right. We could probably say that given his credentials, right, he could be doing something other than being an educator in the toughest town in the state of New Jersey, and probably be making a whole lot more money. Right? But because of his love of his people, love of our community, along with his love, you know, of his art and his intellect. He's an engineer. He's an engineer. Right? Who's now the vice principal of Science High School. Your point is on point, Ed, right? Of Science High School, where we definitely need to re-electrify young black minds as to who we are in terms of that tradition. All of that comes from our ancestry in Africa. All of it, right? He definitely embodies what we need at this particular moment, exactly where he is, and the fact that he also has this wide open space that a lot of our community is sleeping on, that is very healthy, very real in its creative input and in its entrepreneurial dimensions, right? That's another place to help that re-electrifying of our kids' minds to take place. So we are proud to have Naseed gifted on, and let him talk about all things ChemFest, all things creative, all things trying to lift the eyes of our kids with the arts and science for the better of our future. Welcome, son.
Welcome.
Wow,
Welcome,
wow.
bro.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate the introduction. I feel like I don't have anything else to say. You guys have said everything. But I'm ecstatic to be here. I'm ecstatic to be here with such a luscious panel. And actually, you talk about me. I'm looking at you guys' careers, and from South 9th Street, refile and everything else, to where I am today, and I can actually say that you guys are instrumental in my development into the individual that I was in, that I am today, because of the work that you were doing in that model, and taking a model and looking at it from an engineering and reverse engineering it, being a model not only for me and a role model for the community, but me now being able to be a model for that next generation of technology leaders, which has always been my mission, to be the next, to influence, inspire the next generation of technology leaders. And that's always been the core of the work that I've been doing. Just a quick statistic, as far as STEM opportunities, there's the largest growth market in the next 10 years with a 14% increase. There's so many jobs that they have to outsource the jobs or opportunities that's out there, overseas and everything. So, and then being that less than 5% are blacks and browns, just trying to make sure that we know about the various opportunities that are available within STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That is the backbone of a lot of the creative things that I've been doing, and using that art, as you were saying, to be able to not only influence but steer individuals into those career paths. So if you're into gaming, if you're into animation, if you're into comics, using those passions to be able to use that and move it into a career path of something that you can, be able to make a healthy living off of, is something that, ChemFest is all about, where we celebrate Black animation, gaming creators, and comic book creators. That is the nexus of where we have the now generation being able to meet the next generation of creators. And we've been doing this for the last 7 years. This year, we're hosting it at Livingston Mall. And it's just been growing exponentially. Started off at Central High School, moved downtown to the Haynes Building, and now we're doing it even bigger at Livingston Mall. But the core of all of this is, an opportunity for entrepreneurs to be able to interact with the community, to be able to show young people that, look, besides playing the games and reading comic books and being consumers, you can be the creators as well, and to be able to provide that venue where you can actually meet those creators and ask questions and probe and do all of these different things. That is where we are, with the whole ChemFest.
Yes.
So,
yes. You just got a shout out, by the way. I got to shout this out. Principal Cavalli made a point, and I agree with him 1,000%. Right, needs to still be a principal. I will put that out there. Right on, Principal Cavalli. I echo that 1,000%.
I mean, that's another, behind the scenes mentor for me, as some of all of you have been, throughout the years. I mean, but I appreciate, being able to go 360 degrees. A lot of people don't know I actually graduated from science. So to be able to go back home,
Wow.
26 years or 27 years later, to be able to do that. And I think that's how life is supposed to, happen sometimes, because I know I didn't want to go to science initially when I went into education, because I would have been with my old teachers, my old principals, like all of this stuff. But be able to develop and grow myself into the individual that I am, and then be able to come back and be able to, spread that love, that energy, and the skill sets that I have to be able to build. We're looking to build a dynamic STEM program at Science Park High School. So we have the academics excellence and everything with great teachers, great students and everything. Now we want to provide additional opportunities for these young people because we need them not to be, leaders in the classroom. We need them to be global leaders. And that is what we're looking to build. And then being able to leverage technology to be able to do that, so they can improve the conditions that are going on in their community.
Naseed,
go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Naseed, I was just gonna shout out one of our students from Orange High, Kamani Gibson, who recently finished up his PhD in African Studies at NYU, and he did his undergraduate at Drew, but he went on to be an educator because he recalled when he was a young man coming up in the Orange school system, he didn't see young male teachers that looked like him, and it caused him to become what he did not see. So shout out to him, Kamani, who's been teaching at NYU, and he has his first professorship job that he's teaching at now. And I know one of his goals was possibly, and it may have expanded, but to come back into the school so you can see more male teachers, particularly Black male teachers, so that he could see that reflection. And I heard what Conrad said earlier about one of the schools in Brooklyn about how you don't see students. And I know we're having that problem at Payne Tech. We're not seeing a lot of Black male students, but I just want to shout out for the teachers you included. You looking like you're 27 years old right now.
Well, thank you.
Coming back 27 later, that you get to come full circle. That's a blessing.
I want to add to that, Don. I mean, we go back to Orange. Our classic epic fight with around Marilyn Zuniga, and Marilyn made it very plain. She wanted to become the Latina teacher that she never had. Right? So representation matters.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It absolutely matters when you're trying to shape young minds, right? And we need representation there, not just as good teachers and history teachers, right? And I tell young folks all the time, what Dr. Clark used to always say, we ain't gonna build no nation with history teachers. We need engineers, we need architects, we need agriculture, we need all of that kind of scientific.
We need debate teachers. Go ahead, Jonathan.
But what I want to do is bring it back to ChemFest, right? So in ChemFest, what is ChemFest? What is ChemFest? How did it start?
Okay, so ChemFest is a celebration. It's a festival centered around the creators of comics, animation, and game design. So we developed a festival where we celebrate those individuals who are creating this thing. But also it has it actually has a sub goal where we're introducing, because you are passionate about all of these, these different things, that there are career opportunities for you in the STEM fields. So that is what ChemFest is in a nutshell.
So it connects. So what you're doing is you're connecting actual like animation, gaming, comics with actual. Well, are there people within those industries who are also there?
Yes. So there will be experts. There are people who are in the industry that are going to be showcasing their projects and work at the festival. And within that, we actually have a Black animation film festival, which is, if you're familiar with the animation market and how extensive that that actual market is, the Black animation films are this is a niche within a niche, right? So to be able to first, let's be real. The production cost to develop an animated feature or develop an animated project is very, very costly, right? So those individuals who are able to develop a project, this is labor of love and in so many hours of dedication to be able to put these projects together. And I'm talking about, and when we could do a quick math problem, if it's 24 frames per second and your film is only 5 minutes, you can imagine how many frames are within that 5 minutes. So So that is someone actually drawing, rendering, animating, adding background sound and everything else. And that's why when you look at a film, you see so many individuals that's involved within that project, because it takes that many people to bring these things to life. So now, if you look at doing it on a smaller scale, and the labor of love and everything, and how many hours and hours of work to be able to put a project out. So we're going to be showcasing a number of film projects, as well as individuals who have comics and develop their own games. I just want to be able to shout out and showcase all of those individuals that look like you, because that's what influenced me to go into engineering. Because while I was at Science High School, I was one of 10 students who were involved in a robotics experience. And the one main thing at AT&T Bell Labs was that I worked with an engineer that looked like me. And that experience is what influenced me to want to go into engineering, because he did it. I said I could possibly do it, and that's why I pursued that. And then children actually made me want to become an educator, because I was actually transitioning. 9/11 happened. I was transitioning between engineering opportunities. I was working with science. I was working on Arts High, and I was a substitute teacher while I was doing this. And while I was doing that, I actually got a long-term sub gig in a math class, and those young people, they inspired me to want to be able to be an educator. And 20 something years later, I'm still here. And then trying to make the next me.
But there it is, right? That's what you just said, Brother Naseed, is important, right? Because Les Brown said 2 weeks ago, right, on a conference call I was on, he said that until you get a story, you will never see success in your life. What you just told was the story that transformed many lives in the Black community. Because you just gave a roadmap of all the things you did while you were doing that. You went from this high school experience and all that road that you took that got you through your principal to your vice principal to this Khem Fest. All of that is that story. But all of that to transform somebody else's life, right? That's what Les Brown said 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean that and that's what we need. We need models. I know initially, we try to show young people there's another way. Sometimes you got to be the model to be able to show them that there is another way, and be that example. So that's some of the things that I look to do. With all of the skill sets, I have and want to pour into young people.
And when is Khem Fest?
I'm sorry.
Khem Fest is happening next Saturday, September 18th and 19th is Saturday and Sunday at Livingston Mall.
It should be coming across the screen.
Yes. So we're going to have, so that is September 18th and 19th. I'll bring it up to the camera right there. We'll be able to show the actual flyer. That's September 18th and 19th, Livingston Mall, Khem Fest from 12 p.m. until 6 p.m. both days.
You know what you should do, Naseed, is make sure you send that to Jonathan so that we can post it on the Facebook page.
Yes.
If we'd have had it, we'd have posted it tonight, man. But get it to us, and we'll post it so it's up all week, man.
I think Jonathan is posting now. I think Jonathan, work your magic. Go ahead, do it.
What I'm doing right now is just going. I went to the website, and can you explain to us what PBS is?
Okay.
Because you have PBS Media down there, and I went to Khem Fest, and it's PBS Media. So can you explain to us what PBS Media is?
All right. So PBS Media is the organizing company that is the company that I started, which is Focus Black Star Media. This is where we develop animation, comics. This is where we produce our comic book series out of. And that is the host organizer for the Khem Fest. Like I said, this is our 7th year doing Khem Fest. We've done it the last 6 years in Newark, and now this year we're doing it at Livingston Mall. Okay,
so I wanted you to add in there a little bit more about PBS Soldier, the comic book that you do, right? Like, because I mean, you have your own comic book, right?
Yes.
Like you are. I don't know, are you just a writer or artist or both? But I know that you produce a comic book that you've been producing for a while that I have copies of.
Yes. So I'm the writer and creator of a sci-fi Afrofuturism comic book series called PB Soldier, and PBS Media, which is Focus Black Star Media, is the producer of this comic book series, and this comic book series is centered around. Is set in the near future where we live in a world where everyone's considered a terrorist. PB Soldier, who's the individual on the left, is one of the world's top hackers. And because of his hacking ability, becomes one of the top terror threats in the world. It has to go underground, work unofficially off of the books for the newly formed world government called the Establishment. As he is being trained as an assassin, he's actually seeing a life that's not of his own, which is actually his ancestors trying to hack into him while he's hacking into the world. And that is the basis of the story, where he's trying to get an understanding of how his past connects to his present and paves a pathway for the future. And that is something that I've been working on for the last 12 years in print. Now we're moving into the animated we're actually moving into the animated series, so we're looking at.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
so you're animating PBS Soldier.
Yes, so we have a screenplay and everything for that. And as I was going through this journey, because all this has been a journey, right? So as you elaborately stated, I'm not a comic book writer. I wasn't a comic book writer. I didn't go to school for art and everything, so I had to get training. The one thing about engineering is about problem solving. So I saw that there was a problem in the community, that there was a lack of representation for characters that look like us. And especially when we talk about from an educator standpoint, the word superhero, right? When you say the word superhero or hero, most people develop an image in their mind that doesn't look like them. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be able to do a paradigm shift because there is power in words. And when you see superhero, you could most people, when you have a conversation, they name Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, and everyone else, but no one that look like them. So now the understanding that they cannot even see themselves as the hero or the individual that will be able to save the day, be able to empower their community or anything like that. So that was a part of the journey that I went on to develop PB Soldier. I went to NYU. I took courses. I did all these things, and then I did a ton of research. I went to all these Comic Cons, and because of that, all along that journey, I knew that in New Jersey, I was traveling across the country doing these comic conventions in New York. I went as far as California and various other places doing things. And because of that, I was like, man, there is nothing going on in New Jersey. I'm going everywhere else, but there's nothing going on in New Jersey. So we decided to do ChemFest here in New Jersey for it to be a home for all of the individuals that I service each and every day, be able to experience what I experience.
But the graphic is dope.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say
is dope.
And I see how many mini-me's are coming up behind you. Who are you inspiring? Because you didn't see it. Now you brought your imagination to fruition. And
Yes.
do you see that you're bringing this out in other young people? Because now this ChemFest is allowing something to just train up others, young people.
I mean, I'm seeing a ton of things. One is, my own individual family, my son, my daughter, my niece, they are all interested in now writing, developing their own series and everything, of course, becoming entrepreneurs. I've mentored a number of students who are interested in this. One of my, I call him my son. He's a film director now. He used to do art. Now he's a film director. Now he's doing art with his film. So just being able to touch those individual lives and just have them experience, I've done it. I've gone as far as giving booth space to some of my former students, at New York Comic Con. Because I was like, look, if you want to do this, I need you to do it. I don't want you to play with it and say, oh, yeah, I just doodled a couple of things. I want you to see the business side of all of this, because a lot of people understand, I could come up with a concept, but the work that goes in the behind the scenes for you to actually get it out there into the world and be able to have something that's not only something that people will put value on. So the next thing is, of course, the animated series, but we're also looking at some NFTs. So for those who don't know what NFTs are, non-fungible tokens. So it's going to be a totally digital platform to be able to grow the brand.
So, and I see how much I know. When Black Panther was big on the screen and we interviewed Todd Burrows, we asked the question, how much of the storyline is based on things that are going on currently? When you write your comics, how much do you put, current events, or, how much?
I based it on all current events. I depicted a future of what would happen if stop and frisk, the Patriot Act, and a couple of things got magnified. Like, what does that look like for the neighborhood? What did it look like for the hood? But from a technology standpoint. So now, how do we leverage individuals who know about technology? What are they doing in this type of environment, in this type of world? Some people are causing mayhem, but they causing mayhem through cyber technology and through hacking and doing all other types of things.
Right.
Not killing each other, but they're breaking into corporations and things like that. Taking data and understanding cyber espionage and everything else that goes along with it, which kind of makes it cool. But understand that that understanding technology, that you can do so many things with it.
Okay.
Donald, why don't you ask that question that you got in the chat? It's right on point. It's right in line.
Yeah, because I put it in our private chat. There's a young brother from Patterson named Arthur.
Yes.
Okay?
I know him. I don't know him though.
But you know him. Okay.
I know of him. I'm trying to know him. So if any of you know him, please. But I've been trying to have him partner. One of the things that I did while I was at Malcolm X Shabazz, we were developing Gerald Lawson's video game and app development academy. So one of the things I was looking to partner with him with his company. He's one of the only Black animation studios, especially in Japan, Tokyo, Japan, from Patterson,
hailing from Patterson, New Jersey. And what made me put that up, because as you told your story just now, there was nothing out there. When he was being interviewed, he said the same thing, and that took him all the way to Japan because nobody was doing it, and particularly nobody that looked like him was doing it. And he went, and it took him and his brother out to Japan to just do the unthinkable. And we'll have. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say. I've been doing so much research with, what he's doing with his studio. That is the studio that I'm looking to animate the comic book series PB Soldier. So that's no secret. I'm looking forward to working with that brother to bring the PB Soldier to life.
Okay, we have to make that happen. We're gonna try to make that
happen.
I got to ask this question now because we haven't touched on it yet, and we have a co-founder who's not on the air with us right now that just came back from an incredible trip to Egypt with Oscar Kwesi. I want you to share with us why you chose to use the comedic background of our ancestors to frame your work.
Oh man, well, I would probably say tenfold. So when we talk about the first engineers, the first scientists, and everything, we go back to Kemet, right? Imhotep, who is one of my number one heroes, who's the first architect, scholar, engineer, physician that was pretty much written and known to man. Now we also look at Meta Neter, which is the hieroglyphs or the hieroglyphics. Those were words written on walls that depicted pictures that, of course, told a story. So when we talk about comics and animation, we talk about pictures that are telling the story. So going back to the origin and understanding that the roots of all of this comes from our descendants and everything, and that's why, hence, we have Khem Fest. or ChemFest, and that's why we're celebrating Black animation, comic creators, and game designers within this festival each and every day. Of course, during our opening ceremonies, we pay homage to the ancestors, who paved the pathway before us. And then, people cosplay, they go into costume. I generally come out as Emotep or Ramses, to let people know that there is a rich culture that of people that look like you or look like us, and to be able to depict that do it throughout this festival and be able to celebrate it. A lot of people think that we are not the originators of this, but if you do your history, you will see that we are the originators of not only what we talk about with comics, because our comics were written on the walls of Kemet, and then to be able to take that.
Say that again, son. Say that again.
Our comics were written on the walls of Kemet thousands and thousands of years ago before they went into print. So
That's metal. Go make it plain. I just want to make it plain.
So hence we have ChemFest, or it used to be Khem Comic Fest, but now it's just ChemFest because we include game design, animation, and comic book creators.
So now, see how relevant, similar, different is like a Luke Cage or a Black Lightning from what you're doing? Is it similar, different, or because to see all of these storylines coming out of comic, and particularly Black comic actors, if you will, and Black Panther, Black heroes, Black Panther, and then you got the Luke, then Black Lightning, and then I know the Black Lightning storyline was, I don't know if you watched that, but I was like, oh my gosh, they're telling a storyline about current events without even mentioning current events. So, is it different, similar, or
I mean, some of the things. And we go to the origins. So I'll take Luke Cage for instance. The individuals who created Luke Cage, they made him very stereotypical, right? Luke Cage, of course, was an experiment in jail. The creators of that series, of course, the showrunners and everything made it evolve into what it is right currently that we see. But when we look at it originally in the comics, what Marvel put out, he was a stereotype. He was this big, buff, bald head guy,
Black Buck.
There we go, the Black Buck. So that was his thing. And if you actually look at some of the early depictions of him, he actually had chains or shackles on him. So that was his archetype. Same thing with Black Lightning. His origin was similar to that. Now, of course, when they put us in the room, in the creative room, and then we become the showrunners of this, it evolves and then it becomes something that we can relate to on not only on a visual, but on a spiritual level as well. So they've added layers onto it. But the originators who actually created these characters did not look like us. So, I'll just be very, clear with that. But it over the years, because you got to remember these catalogs are, for Marvel, they're like 60 to 70 years old, depending on the character. When we talk about DC characters, they just got finished celebrating 75 years. And then they keep rebooting all of these different series every 7 to 8 years, because that's the formula. Every 7 to 8 years, you come and you'll see another Batman story, you see another Superman story, and then they go through the whole loop of all of this stuff again. But you have a ton of creators that are out there now who've been producing, some original works that speaks to what's going on in our community and everything. But those characters that you spoke of are the more popular ones, because you have these, major corporations that are pushing those brands because they use Black Panther as well as Luke. Actually, Luke Cage was the test market for Black Panther. Right. So if you look at the research,
that makes sense.
That Luke Cage once they put the Luke Cage series out, before that, Black Panther never got greenlit as far as what date it will have a release date. You look at all the Marvel films, you knew all the release dates for every single film. Black Panther, they had it out there, but they never had a release date until they actually got the test market with Luke Cage and said, look, hey, we got some. They put the music, they put the culture, they put it in Harlem. You know, we got a black writer, we got a black showrunner, you know, and then of course we have all this black talent that's in this show, and then we embody it with the music, the culture, and everything else, and everyone ate it up. It was a good series. I watched the series. It was a great series, you know. And then when they saw that, because remember, this wasn't a Marvel movie, this was a Netflix, you know, this was Netflix series and everything, you know. Then they was like, oh, well, we got to do this Black Panther thing, you know. But now we're going even deeper. We're gonna have a black director. We're gonna have, you know, like we're gonna go all the way, because we already saw the formula. This is the formula that worked. This is what people are gravitating to.
And what I love about what you're doing is you're like, and now there's the black company, the black conglomerate, the black person who's the builder, creator, and owning all parts of it. We are nearing the end. We are at the end of this segment, and we have DJ Rhino, who's right here. We want to ask, well, first, thank you for coming on, and we're going to have to have you back on.
Thank you for having me.
Again.
And we got to have DJ Rhino ask the question, because DJ Rhino might have a question for Naseed.
Right. That's why I'm leading it to DJ Rhino. Right. So, DJ Rhino, you could ask Naseed Gifted the question, and if you have questions of your own, please jump in.
Peace, King. How are you?
Peace. How you doing, brother?
Doing well. I came in late in the conversation, but I liked a lot of what I heard. I don't have any other questions on what I heard, but I love what I heard so far. But yeah, normally what we do, you know, when we have a guest on the show, especially if they're new to the show, we like to ask them, you know, pretty much, you know, it's supposed to be a hip hop show as well, a hip hop political show. So we like to ask the question, what hip hop artist or group do you connect with now, or just in general? Like who's a hip hop artist that you feel that you've listened to in your lifetime, that you connect with, that speaks to you?
I mean, you know, I'll start off with Dead Prez. Dead Prez is one. Talib Kweli, Mos Def. You know, those are the ones. India.Arie, Erykah Badu, Fela Kuti. You know,
wow.
Fela, you put Fela in the category of hip hop. Interesting.
I mean, but, see, you gotta understand, like when I'm writing, I put these people on, you know, and generally I write to a rhythm.
Let it flow, baby. That's right.
You know, and it allows me to be able to flow. And you know, you can put on Fela, you can put on Femi Kuti, who's his son, and you know, you just get into a zone with the music and everything. And you know, some of my favorite artists, of course, would be Sade. Sade is I mean, I know she's not considered hip hop, but I mesh all.
She got some dope beats and dope bass lines.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But to Zayed, man, you know, the thing what he was saying, man, about Fela, you know, with all of the artists that he mentioned, like Talib Kweli, and you know, all of the artists that he mentioned, those artists, if you listen to those hip hop artists,
I know where you're going. Right on.
You will be introduced to Fela Kuti.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of Fela stuff was sampled in Talib.
Sampled like crazy. Right on.
That's crazy, and a lot of them. You know what I mean? And so that's really how a lot of us got into a widespread knowledge of music in general, all genres, just through listening to music, trying to sample stuff. And you know, I used to be the type, you know, while I'm sampling, I used to skim through every now and then, but there was a lot of times where I would just throw the needle on and listen to the whole album and get into the music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what happened for our generation in hip hop. That's how we gained our knowledge of music. That's how we gained our love for jazz, rock and roll, fusion, all kinds of stuff, man. So no doubt.
From the seeds of the sound of the seeds.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Rhino. Good stuff. Good transition.
Excellent. And Naseed Gifted, You are
Yes.
welcome to stay for this next section as well to chime in if you want to, but I respect your time if you have to go. So if you want to stick around for the DJ Rhino State of Hip Hop, definitely stick around.
Okay, definitely. I'll definitely stick around. And I like to thank all of you for allowing me to be on the show with you. Definitely appreciate it. Looking forward to all of you, attending KhemFest. We are on social media at KhemFest, KHEMFEST. That's KHEMFEST. Looking forward to having a wonderful, wonderful festival, and to be able to showcase all of this Black excellence that's going on throughout the world. We got people coming from Detroit, down from Miami and everything to be a part of this festival, Philadelphia and every other place. And then last but not least, I'll be remiss if I didn't give recognition to the elder, Yummy Odom, who sanctioned me to be able to do this. They run a festival in Philly called ECBOC, called East Coast Black Age of Comics. They've been going in, this is their 20th, going into their 21st year this year. But I went to the elder and I asked him about, look, I want to do KhemFest in Newark, New Jersey. And he gave me the blessing. So, 7 years later, we still pushing.
Nice.
Right on to that. Ashe.
Well, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. And great working with you. And we're definitely got to have you back.
All right. Thank you. Definitely. Take
All
care,
right,
everyone.
All right. So let's stick around. DJ
I'm
Rhino.
Stick around.
I'll be here.
What's up?
So
What's
start
up,
with
man?
the T-shirt.
You know that. He's always
All right, well, before
Okay.
I go to the T-shirt,
Okay.
we were just talking about jazz music and the stuff that we sampled back in the days and all of that stuff. Kool and the Gang. Rest in peace, Ronald Bell. Today makes a year of his loss, of us losing him.
Kool and the Gang is Jersey City, New Jersey.
Right, that's Jersey right there. So, so big ups to the Bell family. Him and his brothers were, he was one of the co-founders of the group Kool and the Gang. So, and we lost him a year ago today. So, rest in peace, Ronald Bell.
Yeah, that's my stuff.
The shirt, Khem, Big Daddy Khem. Today is his birthday officially. I was posting it yesterday for some reason. I don't know why I thought yesterday was his birthday, but today is his birthday. September 10th. Big Daddy Khem from Brooklyn. He's one of the gods, one of the kings, coming out of Brooklyn, man, in hip hop, one of the MCs, man, that a lot of people like, such as Biggie, Jay-Z, they all looked up to Big Daddy Khem. You know what I'm saying? Big Daddy Khem was one of those dudes. I always said he was one of those brothers that challenged tempo. When he came out with his first single, Raw. Well, it wasn't his first single. Well, yeah, it was his first solo single without Biz on it. Raw, R-A-W. When he came out with that, it was an up-tempo song. Then he put out his second single after that, Set It Off, which was even faster than Raw. And I wish I had the BPMs on me to show it to really explain it to you. But I'm telling you, it got faster and faster, because then after Set It Off, he puts out Wrath of Cain, which was insanely fast for back in those days. The only people that were really challenging those same kind of tempos like Kane was Chuck D, Public Enemy, and Rakim. You know what I'm saying? They were the ones that were out there that were really like doing the up tempo. I mean, there were others, Queen Latifah, Chubb Rock. There were others out there doing it, but the ones that were really going hard, that were in the forefront, really like pushing at those fast tempos, man, was Big Daddy Kane. So big ups to Kane, man. He mastered his breath control, because I think he was one of those people. Even Chuck D mentioned this, that Big Daddy Kane was one of those brothers that would, he would do all of these lyrics, these fast tempo lyrics. Then he'd be dancing and all of that at the same time, and he'd keep all his breath in control. You know what I'm saying?
Lyrical gymnastics.
Yeah, man. You know what I'm saying? And so big ups to Big Daddy Kane, man, because
Time out.
Soldier. What's up?
Time out. Somebody else had a birthday too. Somebody named by the name of DJ Rhino had a birthday a couple of days ago too. We got to shout out him right here on the show.
That's right. Happy birthday, DJ Rhino.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, on Tuesday, on the 7th.
That's right.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
51, 5-1. 5-1.
Wow.
You hip hoppers are getting old.
And that was such a cute baby. That was such a cute baby picture. Love that baby.
Yeah, I was 5 years old in that picture. That was at my grandmother's house, and me and somebody was debating on whether my mother or my grandmother made that cake that was in front of me.
Oh,
I was 5 years old in that picture.
Oh, a dimple.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you. And there was a few birthdays because it's Virgo season. I mean,
my child is a Virgo.
I might be jumping ahead because I know this month. I mean, we've had like Dougie Fresh, Nas. I mean, just for the Virgo season, we have Dougie Fresh, Nas, Beyonce, Dave Chappelle, Michael Jackson. There's MC Shan. There's a whole lot of Virgos out there in hip hop and in music and entertainment and all that. Jennifer Hudson, who knocked it out on Aretha. Y'all saw Aretha?
Yeah, I saw
Not
it.
yet.
I saw it a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago.
Yeah, she did her thing. She did her thing. So big ups to Jennifer Hudson and happy born to her when her born day comes.
Yeah, I love Jennifer Hudson. She's like She's one of my favorite actresses.
Yeah, just thinking of the weight that was on her, because Aretha asked her herself, "Can you do this? Can you portray me?" That's
Wow.
like,
Wow. I
yeah.
didn't realize that. Wow.
But
Yeah.
the fact that she got Aretha's blessing, because Aretha could be a hard one. You know what I mean? But
Right.
the fact that she got Aretha's blessing to even play her, you know what I mean? That's what's up. You know what I mean?
And also to sing, right? To sing those songs. I've listened to the soundtrack. Soundtrack's pretty good. Like Jennifer Hudson does her thing. Like I think she should win an Oscar just for the soundtrack.
Yeah. Definitely. And speaking of our beautiful sisters that sing, Donna, I don't know if you got the word yet, but Anita Baker finally got her
masters. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
I thought you was gonna say I was dropping the album.
Man, that was a great
No. But she Anita Baker finally got that.
Massive,
go on her music. So now everybody go out there, stream it, buy it. What you got to do. And now I'm really hoping that the that little rumor of the versus rumor of her and Sade. Now I'm hoping that it happens for real.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
people were talking about Sade and
was my second wife. Anita Baker was my second wife. So
who was your first?
My second wife was Anita Baker. My first wife was probably Pam Grier.
Oh, okay.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably Pam Grier.
He was probably married.
I was too young to know what it was, but got to be marriage, right? Got to be marriage.
Yeah, that was. And
Rhino,
Rhino,
you still here? Jump in. You got to jump in the conversation.
Yeah. And I know Rhino. I went to the Capitol Jazz Fest. When she was doing her last tour, and I seen Anita at the Capitol Jazz Fest 2 years ago, and Regina Bell came on stage with her, and it was just like, woo. So anybody, she would just inspire.
And that was that era, man. Anita Baker, Regina Bell, Mickey Howard.
Yes.
Like back then, that was that era. Boy. You can't match that. You can't match those days. You can't match those days. Zaire, were you able to make it to 24 hours apiece?
Never got to the stage.
Nah, never got. but you were there though.
Snatched up all around the stage, but never got to the stage.
That's kind of how
I was going to the stage, and we brought KRS-One back to Source of Knowledge, and we did a cipher with him at Source of Knowledge. Never got to the stage. I love the stuff that you put up. I'm glad you got there, right?
Yeah. I tried to get some kind of footage because originally I know I was supposed to get back there. I was supposed to get the pass and get back there and speak to people. I had my man with me. My man G was with me. I had my son with me. I had my daughter and her friend with me. They were bouncing around between me and my daughter's friend's mom, and so it was too much going on with me. So I wasn't able to get in there and try to get that pass because I wasn't sure if that pass was going to be enough for me and anybody else that was with me. So I just said, I didn't hear anything.
You're not sure if you had an entourage pass.
Yeah, right. Plus, I didn't really trust. I didn't really want to go up there and be shabby with it and go up there and not have the right connections because I knew I wasn't going to be able to hear y'all. You know what I'm saying? Because y'all saw I didn't have it was hard for me to hear y'all. Right. So I was like, nah, let me not even push it like that. So I said, let me get some footage of the actual shows that was going on. So that's what I caught for y'all. And
now KRS-One was that source of knowledge, you said?
Yeah.
he closed out the show the first night on Friday.
Yeah, they had tables, they had vendors, you know, and chairs from the stage all as far back as Source of Knowledge.
Nice.
Right? So because it was a broader market, and I didn't have the car, I had to get a car and go to Source of Knowledge to come back toward the stage. But so much was going on with Source of Knowledge, kept running into folks and having these long conversations. Ran into Bashir and Dashawn. We went on for days, you know. And then you know, Mitty's bringing KRS-One back to the store just as I'm getting to the stage. So we went with KRS-One.
Yeah.
It had a few minutes with him that was good. So I actually never got to the stage, but what y'all got was good. And it was, and I want y'all to appreciate this also, right? That took place 24 Hours Apiece was the 10th year. It was the return of 24 Hours Apiece after the pandemic. For the first time, we had a peace week wrapped around 24 Hours Apiece.
Right.
And right before that, we had an ugly spate of violence that needed to be chilled out, right? And the fact that we have one of the most original pieces of all of our peace work, of all of our anti-violence work, hip hop is right there with 24 Hours Apiece, right? And we built the other strategies around that, No Community Street Team and No Street Academy and so on and so forth. All that came later, but the first piece to that before we took City Hall with the mayor, right. was 24 Hours Apiece.
So what you're saying? So 24 Hours Apiece has been on for a long time, and it's a product of activists who have understood the connection between art and reality, right? Like how art can inspire reality and change it for the better, right? Like using music, using hip hop to have a better understanding of our need for community and peace.
That's right. That's the birth of hip hop was the essence. It was creating a new space, telling new stories over old beats, and bringing our people together in a way where we can have fun in doing that, right? And that's the origins of hip hop in the first place. And we need to get back to its essence to really help change the game what's happening on our streets that needs a whole lot of help.
Yep. So what I did, I just reposted some of the clips from that night on my page on Facebook. You can go to my Facebook page, just type in Rhino CMZ, it should come up, and it should be the most recent post on there. It's a few clips on there. And it's Beanie Siegel, it's Freeway, it's Jadakiss. I wasn't able to get KRS-One because my phone ran out of space that night. But yeah, you can catch. I also caught Lords of the Underground. I caught 050 Boys, which really, I was surprised. I don't mean to say surprised. I mean they were already dope, but I mean they banged out that night. The boys really did their thing that night. And I got mad respect for those dudes. So big ups to 050 Boys, of course, Lords of Underground, Do It All, Hakeem Green. You know, they held it down. Big ups to Keisha. I saw her back there doing her thing. Yeah, man. And you know, I saw Chris.
Her birthday's coming up. She's a Virgo too.
What'd you say?
Her birthday's coming up too. She's a Virgo too. She's the 18th.
Yeah, that's right. Virgos are ruling right now.
Yeah, and really big extra shout out to Keisha Yuri for the way she put that together. I know Chris Randall described just watching her in action. She was handling multiple things at multiple times, just making it all flow. So much respect to Keisha Yuri for being the superwoman, the superhero, the organizer extraordinaire who, you know.
You muted Naseed. I know you're trying to say something.
I'm sorry?
Naseed is trying to say something. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait, you're on mute.
What about Science High?
No, I was just saying she's from Science High as well.
Oh, okay.
Yes. She's
doing that great work. Well. Doing that great work.
Yeah. So that's it for me. Tomorrow, you know, normally I do my thing on twitch.tv at 3 p.m. the shake up tomorrow. But what I'm going to be doing at 3 p.m. tomorrow is I'll be down at Military Park tomorrow, downtown Newark, Military Park at 3 p.m. For the Brick City Jam.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So my man Livingston, he's putting the whole thing together. It's part of a whole film thing that he's been doing for a while now. You know, the pandemic kind of slowed things down, but you know now everybody's trying to come out a little bit. So we're gonna be out there tomorrow. It's from 3 to 7, from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Come out there at 3 o'clock sharp. You'll see me because I'm opening it up.
Military Park.
Okay.
Military Park tomorrow downtown.
All right, nice. That sounds good, man. You need to make sure someone goes live with that.
Yeah. I'm gonna see what I can do. Yeah, my man was trying to tell me to go live Twitch from down there. So
Yeah.
we'll see what's up.
Go live multiple formats, man.
Yeah, we'll see what's up.
All right. So we only have a few minutes left, less than 5 minutes left. So I know Donna and Zaid, you always have some stuff to add. Naseed Gifted, anything to add? Just please feel free, jump in.
Well, I'll just say tomorrow will be the 20th commemoration of 9/11. And as this year, I like how they're reflecting. They're doing the women who have extraordinary stories from that day, and where were you? And everybody can remember where they were at that moment on 9/11. So the stories that have been highlighted, I know Robin Roberts did a good one highlighting women, and also now young people who were born, as we lost many people, they highlighted a lot of the lives of the young people. What are they doing now? And several of the young people who lost their parents or loved ones as a result of 9/11 have gone on to law enforcement. So just be reflecting on that tomorrow.
Zaid, Naseed?
Well, I'm gonna take you to a place that you might not expect. Today, and we just alluded to it just for a hot second in our discussion earlier. Today is an unusual sports anniversary. It's the anniversary of Muhammad Ali in his first rematch with Ken Norton. Right? Those of you who can't remember Muhammad Ali, the fighter, Ken Norton was one of his most difficult opponents and actually broke his jaw and gave him his second defeat back in March of 1973. This was a rematch, and it was as much a war as the second. And I'm saying that to segue back to Blood Brothers, right? The Netflix documentary that talks about the relationship between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm, right? And y'all know that Malcolm's at the center of my universe, and I have to sit down and actually do a piece on Blood Brothers and take that apart and do my own critical analysis on its value, its pluses, its minuses. But it's got enough pluses for me to tell you to take a look at it. It's a hard look for me to look at, right? Because these are my two maximum heroes coming up, and the fact of how they got pulled apart was really a difficult thing to deal with, and it's an important thing for us to understand. When I'm on the streets, not doing piecework, the first things I do is apologize to our generation, right? Because folks think that we had all the answers, from our generation, and in the 60s, we didn't handle disagreement well, even at the height of our movement. And that was one of the things that COINTELPRO made a point of going after and exploiting, right? And that's the piece that wasn't developed enough in my modest judgment for this particular thing. But the enormous humanity of these men at that particular moment is in that piece, right? And I'm glad that Ilyasa got a chance to have more say in that piece also, that Ilyasa and Untitled Chapter got a chance to say more about their father and their uncle Muhammad, their uncle Muhammad, right? Because their friendship was important at a critical time in each of their lives, and it's a load to look at, and so I encourage folks to look at that.
All right. Well, thank you. And Naseed Gifted, you will have the last say.
Oh wow! Well, thank you for allowing me to close out the show. With all these dominating personalities and everything, you guys have been doing such a great thing. But I'm always thinking about Emoja, unity and being able to come together and develop this economic base. So allowing our dollars to be able to do the talking for the change that we're looking for in our community. anything that we're looking to do, to be able to do it collectively, but allowing our dollars to be able to come together and then be able to lead the charge in what we need to be able to do. So being able to develop, young entrepreneurs and develop a economic base within our community, so we can change, and influence a lot of the things that's going on, and be able to change everything that's going on around us because of that economic base that we'd be able to do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. I just want to put up ChemFest as we close out the hour. And ChemFest takes place September 18th and the 19th. And it's at you said it's at Livingston Mall?
Yes, it's at Livingston Mall.
Livingston Mall will never be the same.
And it starts, what time does it start?
Starts at 12 p.m., ends at 6 p.m.
Each day?
Each day.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and thank all of our guests. We loved having we had a representative from the NAACP on at 6. We had a great conversation about their conference that's coming up. We had Dr. Kelly Harris on at 6:30, talking about 20 years later from 9/11, 20 years later, and what that really means in terms of COINTELPRO, what it meant in terms of surveillance. We glad that we had the vote on, and Conrad came through tonight talking about New York politics, and glad we had you coming on as well. Naseed Gifted talking about ChemFest, and of course DJ Rhino and the state of hip hop. So until next week, we will talk to you later. Be careful, be safe, and have a good weekend.
And before we say goodbye, just remember to call somebody in New York and tell them to make sure they get out and vote.
Yes.
Number one.
Get out and vote.
Get out and vote.